We're going to call tonight's meeting to order. Commissioner Hawkins, will you please give tonight's invocation?
Please bow your heads. Lord, we'd like to thank you for waking us this morning and just allowing us to see another day, Lord. We want to thank you for being awesome God that you are. And just as we go through this meeting, Lord, we also ask you to bless our state, our county, and our city. These and other blessings we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Roll call.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Here.
Commissioner Thorne?
Here.
Commissioner Clark?
Here.
Commissioner Carter?
Here.
Commissioner Jordan?
Here.
Commissioner Hawkins?
Here.
Commissioner Skeen?
Here.
Commissioner Brumbelow?
Here.
Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from last month's meeting? And if so, do I have a first? Motion to first?
I'll make a motion to pass.
Second.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Brumbelow?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen?
Aye.
Motion passes to approve. Ms. Cobb, first item tonight is a request to rezone a 10.7 acre tract of land located on the south side of Green Tea Road, east of US Highway 51 and west of Interstate 55 in Section 1, Township 3 South, Range 8 West, from R12 Single Family Residential District, medium density, to C2 Highway Commercial District.
All right,
Or Mr. BJ, sorry.
that's fine. Some of you may recall, this has to do with the Crossroads North development. We saw that preliminary plat back in the fall. It started out back in 2017, and at that time, the property, which had been zoned as a commercial PUD, was rezoned to R12 residential. Then a portion of the property was developed as the Crossroads subdivision, which was an R12 subdivision. And then the northern half, basically, of the property was left out as future development. Then this past fall, we saw a preliminary plat for that northern half of the property. Right at the intersection of Green Tea and Highway. We zoned that corner from the R12 district to the C2 district, and that was approved just a few months ago. Since that time, the property has changed hands from Cal Wilkins, who was the original owner and developer of the property. And the new owners, which is Creative Constructions LLC, have decided to look at rezoning about 10 acres on the north end of the property from the R12 district to commercial. And basically what that will do is, from the commercial corner that's currently zoned C2, that will bring the commercial zoning across the entire north end of the property and take up about a third of the residential subdivision. Now, in your packet, you have the applicant's response and the staff comments concerning the criteria that you are to use in reviewing the acceptability of the rezoning. I would note that the comprehensive plan for the city, the current comprehensive plan, reflects the subject property as single-family medium density.
Will the applicant please come forward, state your name and address?
George Reedy, 175 East Commerce, Hernando. We have Mr. Houston also on this matter, but he's going to handle more of the second one, we hope. As y'all recall, I was up here in front of you for the presentation from Mr. Wilkins on the first change, and would remind you again, in addition to what BJ related, which was all exactly as we presented last time, that originally this was a big commercial PUD, and because of failure to develop, it was taken back to the residential. And as I explained last time, we got some bad advice from a previous director of the department that removed the commercial. We presented all that last time, and then y'all agreed that it was appropriate to rezone back to commercial on the corner. And I would submit to the commission that because of that, and because of the shown of the changed circumstances, because of what y'all all know about Green Tea and 51, about all the development there, the AWG, the expansion of the intersection, the expansion of the highway, the designation of Green Tea as the corridor going to McInville Road for the access to 269 is all the change in the neighborhood. There's already commercial on three of the corners, the three other corners there. So this just matches what's already there. And I know that I still feel like when I look at the plan, and the 269 corridor plan, I believe that commercial retail development is appropriate in that district. And I would say that this is just an expansion of the decision that you made last time to allow the commercial at the corner. This is just allowing more space, which is going to allow the current owner to do more commercial there. And I've got the information if anybody cares. It doesn't really matter about the zoning, but I'm glad to share with you if anybody has the questions about what the current plan is to be going in there. I would point out something that I don't know if there's anybody here from the neighborhood to object. I know there wasn't last time. But I will point out that sometimes this comes up and that I've heard about, and I'm sure you, ladies and gentlemen here have seen plenty of times, is that the concern for the adjoining landowners, if there's going to be commercial right there next to them. But I would point out that the owner is the adjoining landowner, right? There is nothing there yet. He bought everything that was left from Mr. Wilkins' property. And so he is trying to convert his own property from a residential to more commercial. And am I clear as mud about that? Does everybody understand what I'm saying? So there's not third parties or homeowners at this point that would be objecting. And in fact, I spoke to him again yesterday because I think everybody knows, I mean, I consider this my neighborhood. You know, 51, Byhalia, Jaybird, or Getwell, and Pleasant Hill, that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's my neighborhood, right? And I care about what goes in here. And so I had a discussion with him about what he was going to be doing there. And he obligated himself, told me that, and I think you'll see it from the plat if we get this approval, and Mr. Houston comes up, that the C2, the store on the corner, is going to be built first. So anybody that happens to buy, that wants to buy a house in what's going to remain of the residential area, they're going to see it. They're going to know about it. And he's going to do it fancy with a brick entrance, double gated, and instead of just, like for the detention pond on the highway for the residential area, it's not going to be just a detention pond. He's going to have a nice fountain there. So it's going to be really high class. And this is the same individual / corporation that did the convenience store that's across the other side of the street. And I think everybody would agree that that's pretty high-class convenience store, and he says this is even going to be built at a higher level because it's going to be right against his subdivision. So I'm happy to answer questions. I think, like I said last time, that the proof that this commission decided was sufficient to prove the need for the change of the zoning would apply here. So it should be the same decision, but I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have specifically about any problems you see or something you more want to know other than what I've presented. Because this just is an expansion of the existing.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Reedy?
What is the plan to put in there? I'm curious.
Do you have the little plat there? in your package. So if the parcels match that I have, that little parcel, 1 is gonna be the convenience store. 2 is gonna be additional commercial retail strips, which would be, it's intended to be sales tax generating for the city of Hernando. partial 4 is a restaurant, and partials 3, 5, and 6 are planned for hotels. Partial 3 is gonna be the hotel. Now, you know, of course, after partial 1, partial 3 would be the first hotel, and after that, I guess the market's gonna determine whether or not you can have another hotel there. And let me tell you the reasoning there, because I questioned it too, because since you're asking about it, Mr. Jordan, I'm sure you've got the same questions about a hotel. You know, AWG is gonna have huge influx, just apparently, pretty good, and there's all the time with executives coming in and things they're doing, so I mean, it's gonna be a convenient hotel for that. That's the business reasoning behind a hotel there.
Are there any plans for a buffer in between? I mean,
Well, that's required by your zoning requirements, so all that's part of the site plan, but that will absolutely be met to meet all the city's requirements for the buffer between a commercial and a residential. And again, this is the man who's doing the commercial is the man who owns the residential, so, you know, he's either gonna take a hit on his own lots, or he's gonna do it in such a fashion that it's not gonna affect his lots, right? So we don't face the usual circumstance where we've got a third party that might be adversely affected. Anything he does, he's doing to his own property.
That, the R12 between the current Crossroads and this plan, is there a plan for that section in the middle between that? That's the transition between commercial and residential, I think, is still a question.
You're talking about that's now owned by Mr. Patel.
Yes.
There'll be a buffer zone. They'll meet city requirements.
Mr. Thorne?
But the R12, the subdivision, will remain, the one that's been approved will just be modified to, there'll be a buffer zone in between it and the commercial.
I think it's just taking out what's gonna be we hope will be converted to commercial.
That's correct.
And the
Right, 'cause
rest
that,
of,
well, like you said when we come back last time, we had the corner, and then all of that was residential. And now this big extra piece being commercial, I'm just confused about the transition between commercial and residential.
Well, first off, it's actually the next item on the
I
agenda.
know, right?
But just for your information, the ordinance requires a 30-foot landscape buffer between commercial, like C2 commercial and R12. It also requires a 6-foot brick wall as part of that buffer yard, okay? So that would be the buffer between the commercial and the residential.
and I think, going back to my question, and I think that's clear from the plat now that I found it in
Yeah,
the
it's in
second.
the second one.
It's in the second package. That the buffer is gonna be on the commercial side.
correct.
That was kind of where I was trying to.
Again, you know, I'm a resident of Hernando, and this is my neighborhood, and our planning department does an excellent job, I think, the best in the county, I think, of buffer requirements and protecting subdivisions on these dividers between commercial and residential. So that's that's not a rezoning issue, that's more of a site plan, but I know it's a concern to the commission. There'll still be 43, Mr. Thorne, there'll still be 43 houses. to
Yeah, I'm
build
looking at the
over.
other, the next one.
Right.
Compare the two.
And like I said, this is his property, he's planning on doing a very high-end. He has a reputation for doing high-end stuff, and, you know, like, that's really going over and above and beyond on building for everybody makes a profit off what they do, you know, and instead of just a plain detention pond sitting there, it's gonna be fountains, so, you know, that's kind of fancy, really, so.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Reedy? Thank you, Mr. Reedy.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here for or against this application? And if so, please come forward, state your name and address. How are you?
Okay. I'm Valerie Miller, and I live at 1362 Bending Oak East here in Hernando. I completely disagree with this entire project. In my subdivision, we only have just a couple of entry and exit ways to Byhalia Road. And my concerns are two things, actually, well, maybe three, but the first is traffic. And we have plenty, in my opinion, businesses in our city that supply plenty of tax money, so we can just draw a line there. But anyway, needless to say, I'm concerned about the traffic. I'm concerned about, rental properties in the sense that, what is that going to bring to our subdivision and to our community? And it's an unfortunate, informed, just automatically known that rental properties can cause an area to go down, and I'm also concerned about that as well. So I guess just after kind of reviewing and seeing everything, I disapprove completely on this project. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
could I ask which project the lady was?
Yeah, I was going to.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Ms. Miller, what was that in reference to? Because
Sorry, she's laid the ground.
Okay, now I'm completely embarrassed.
oh, it's fine.
I was referring to the townhouses and the build right there off of Byhalia Road.
Yes, ma'am. So when we get to that item, we will ask you. Now, you've cut your time of speaking in half, but yes, ma'am.
I'm so
it's fine.
sorry.
It's
I'm
okay.
so embarrassed. This is my very first hearing. I
Well,
apologize.
welcome. Good
I'm
job.
slightly ignorant to that extent.
The
Okay,
rest
I
of you can go
apologize.
home. She did
And
it
I
for
was
y'all.
I was also late coming in through the door, so I was like, okay, are they talking about adding other stuff to this little, very small lotted area? And I was like, Lord help me, Lord help me.
I
So-
promise you'll get your day in court. So,
Okay, sorry again.
no worries. It's good to laugh. So, all right. Is there anyone here for or against this item here that we're discussing?
Green tea and highway.
Green tea and Highway 51. If not, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Aldermen of a rezoning requested by Mr. J. Byron Houston, Houston Engineering, representing Creative Constructions LLC, the owner of the property of a 10.7 acre tract of land from its current zoning of the R12 Single Family Residential District, medium density to the C2 Highway Commercial District. The subject property is located on the south side of Green Tea Road, east of US Highway 51 and west of Interstate 55, in Section 1, Township 3 South, Range 8 West, based upon the findings set forth in 1, 2, and 3.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, you did Keith.
Who made that second? I'm sorry, just Kevin.
Kevin and Keith.
You did it.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Brumbelow?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen?
Aye.
The motion to approve passes. Mr. Page, item number 2, which is a request to amend the preliminary plat approval for Crossroads North subdivision.
All right. I won't take any time going over the history of the development since we kind of did that the last time. So we'll pass over that and we'll move to the actual application, which is to revise the preliminary plat to reflect the change in zoning that we just got through approving, okay? And basically, as we discussed earlier, that will turn the north 10.7 acres to commercial, and then the remainder of the property would remain in the R12 district zoning. Basically, the net effect is that it would reduce the residential development by 22 lots and 1 small piece of common open space. The amended preliminary plat still reflects 3 access points, 1 access to the west to US Highway 51, 1 access to the north to Green Tea Road, and 1 access to the south, constituting an extension of Fawn Grove Trail in Phase 2 of the existing Crossroads subdivision. The proposed streets will be 50-foot right-of-ways. The northernmost east-west street and the northernmost north-south street, which both border the proposed commercial lots, are proposed as 68-foot right-of-way widths. I have given you the setback requirements for the residential zoning, as well as the setback requirements for the commercial portion of the property. Now, one thing that I would like to mention, if everyone would turn with me to the 3rd exhibit, which is this one here that shows the commercial and the residential portion of the property. I think my comments will make more sense if you're looking at that drawing. Because the amended preliminary plat now combines 2 different land uses, commercial and residential, I think that consideration should be given to the following revisions. First, we have this north-south street that cuts up between the commercial properties, It connects the northernmost east-west street in the subdivision to Green Tea Road, okay? I believe that the commission should consider converting that street to a cul-de-sac. That would prevent commercial traffic from encroaching on the residential subdivision. It would also allow the buffer area with the 6-foot brick wall that I mentioned in the last item to go continuously along the southern boundary of that property, okay? I think that the 30-foot wide buffer that's identified along the southern boundary of the commercial lots should be revised to read 30-foot landscape buffer and non-access easement to ensure that we're not talking about any kind of commercial driveways onto that otherwise residential street. That basically, all of the lots, with the exception of 2 of the lots that would be on the cul-de-sac, all of the other lots have access to Green Tea Road. So it is, unnecessary for them to have an access onto that northernmost east-west street. I would call it by name, but they didn't put a name on the drawing, so I just have to refer to it that way. Finally, well, not finally, I'm sorry, number 3, we need to extend the 68-foot wide right-of-way for the northernmost east-west street to its interconnection with the southernmost east-west street, because basically that street is going to become a collector that's going to collect all of the traffic inside the subdivision to bring it out to Highway 51. Okay? And then finally, I think that the plat needs to identify cross-access easements. You know, since we're talking about individual lots and not a common unified shopping center, I think we need to reflect on the plat cross-access easements between the lots so that traffic within the commercial development can move from lot to lot without having to get out on Green Tea Road. That keeps the traffic internal to the commercial development. Okay? I would also note that we have not yet received a copy of the proposed restrictive covenants for the Crossroads North subdivision. However, we would anticipate that the minimum house size proposed for this development would be the same as required for the existing Crossroads subdivision, phases 1 and 2. The existing Crossroads subdivision requires each house to provide a minimum finished heated floor area of 2,300 square feet. The home design is also required to include 75% brick exterior finish and a 2-car side load garage. Under the proposed motion to grant approval to the 55-lot subdivision consisting of 34.86 acres, Item 1, we need to submit a revised preliminary plat to the planning staff for review and approval prior to the submission of any final plat. Basically, what you have in your application packet is not the proper preliminary plat format, okay? So we do need to get the proper documentation in the file. Secondly, we need to, I have included some changes and corrections, revise the submitted plat amendment to reflect the correct preliminary plat format, add a mortgagee certificate if applicable, revise the owner and mortgagee certificates to use our current wording for that purpose, revise the building setback line on lots 4, 5, and 6 to reflect the correct front yard setback for those lots along Green Tea Road. Basically, all commercial properties have 50-foot front yard setbacks. Let's see, item E, revise the numbering of the commercial lots to be consecutive with the residential lots. Right now, you know, it's showing the commercial lots as 1 through 6, and then the residential lots has a totally different numbering system, but it's all one preliminary plat. You know, whether it's commercial or residential, it's one development with 2 zonings, okay? So the numbering should be consecutive. We need to correct the label on lot number 5 of the commercial lots. And it looks like just kind of a computer glitch because it shows a second lot 1 kind of overlaying. You can kind of see a little bit of another label underneath it, so it just needs to be corrected. Reflect the right-of-way widths in the residential portion of the subdivision, reflect the street names, reflect the easement locations and purposes, revise the east-west cul-de-sac in the residential portion of the development to clearly show that it is not proposed to go through to US Highway 51. Convert the northernmost north-south street to a cul-de-sac, thereby eliminating its interconnection to the northernmost east-west street. Revise the 30-foot wide buffer identified along the southern boundary of the commercial lots to read 30-foot landscape buffer and non-access easement. Extend the 68-foot wide right-of-way for the northernmost east-west street to its interconnection with the southernmost east-west street. Identify cross-access easements to provide for internal traffic movement between the commercial lots and joint access points. Revise the notes on the plat to incorporate the setback requirements for the residential portion of the development. Revise the plat to reflect the location of the cluster mailbox site proposed to serve this development, along with a proposal for construction conforming to the amendment to the city's subdivision regulations recently adopted by the Board of Aldermen. Item number 2, restrictive covenants shall be submitted to the planning staff for review and approval prior to submission of any final plat in this property. The submitted covenants shall match the covenants that were recorded with phases 1 and 2 Crossroads subdivision. If more restrictive amendments are requested by the developer, they shall be reviewed and approved by the planning staff. If the proposed changes are less restrictive than is currently required by the previous phases of Crossroads subdivision, those changes shall be approved by the planning commission. So basically, as long as they're equaling what's in Crossroads, the existing Crossroads, or if they want to do something that's more restrictive than Crossroads, the planning staff can approve the covenants. But if they want to do something less restrictive than in Crossroads, that would come back to the planning commission for approval. The submitted covenants shall include the minimum finished heated floor area requirements and architectural provisions for the residential portion of the development, requirements concerning the maintenance of the cluster mailbox site and how the cost will be shared between the property owners, provision that no amendments may be made to the restricted covenants and recorded unless such amendments have previously been approved by the City of Hernando Planning Commission, and a provision that none of the residential lots may be further subdivided in the future. Improvements to be the responsibility of the developer and not the responsibility of the City of Hernando, and the remainder of the conditions are our standard subdivision conditions. That's my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Mr. Page, the cul-de-sac that you brought up in your presentation on the north-south, would that not cut off the egress into the subdivision? Because looking at this, I'm only seeing one ingress in. Am I wrong in that?
Well, basically, you have 2 access points. One that goes out to Highway 51, the northernmost east-west street. Then you have an interconnection to Fawn Lane. They're on kind of the southeast corner of the residential subdivision that ties back into Crossroads subdivision, which has additional accesses out to Highway 51. So it does have 2 access points, which is normally what we look for in a subdivision.
Okay, that's what I wanted to be clear on, because it looked like with that cul-de-sac, it was going to cut off one of the egresses into and out of that
Sure.
subdivision.
Well, and it does. You're entirely correct on that point. But as I said, we try to keep commercial traffic, away from residential developments. And since we have lots that border that street, we don't want a whole bunch of traffic on that street.
That lot on the south side of that east-west street, the big lot right there, was lot 72 in the current plat.
I believe that's where the detention basin is.
It's still a common area, it's
Yeah.
gonna be left. Okay. I guess that's why I'd like to hear what the builder says about cutting off that ingress egress or a developer, because, that's an empty lot, so that's not really residential in that spot. So I'd be curious what the developer says.
Can I have just a moment?
Sure.
Mr. Page? Just real quick on the calls, and I just want to make clear, based on what Mr. Carter was saying, are you suggesting putting a cul-de-sac between the commercial lots 2 and 3 to cut that off and leave the current egress into the residential as is?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I just spoke to Mr. Houston. He says, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're going to finish up, Mr. Page, and then I'll
Oh,
get you
I'm
back.
sorry.
Yeah, we're still, sorry. Are there any other questions or comments?
We
for Mr.
just,
Page?
we need Mr. Page to sketch something out so we can understand what he's talking about, I think.
I might pick up with the time.
I know. I think I get it, but I'm a little bit, it's still a little
Well,
fuzzy.
as Mr. Thorne said, basically, if you look at the commercial portion of the subdivision, and you see lots 2 and 3, which 2 is there south of lot 1, and then 3 is right across that north-south street from it. I'm saying that north-south street become a cul-de-sac in that area between 2 and 3.
I got
You
you.
know, so that becomes the access for 2 and 3, but there is no commercial access onto the residential street, you know, that's going east-west.
If you do that, though, how are you gonna access 5 and 6?
Well,
That's
5
going
and
all the way to
6,
Green Tea, right?
well, all of them have frontage on Green Tea Road. Plus, as I said before, I think all of the lots need to have cross-access easements so that they can all share joint access with each other. And, you know, basically, if you have somebody that's going to the retail strip, you know, and then going to the hotel or going to some other, you know, like the restaurant or whatever that Mr. Reedy talked about, you want them to be able to make those movements without getting out onto Green Tea Road, because every time you have somebody turning out onto a major road, that creates conflict, that slows down traffic and creates congestion. So if we can keep the circulation, you know, within the development, then that will aid in our trying to control traffic in that area.
So access to residential's off Highway 51, access to commercial's off Green Tea.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I think that makes
That's
sense.
that's just my suggestion, you know, you guys don't have to
Yeah.
take it if you don't want to.
Mr. Chairman, can I save a little time?
Well, anyone else got questions or comments for Mr. Page? All right, Mr. Reedy.
I think, again, I didn't have anything to do with this part of the presentation. Mr. Houston was not didn't do the original subdivision. He didn't have access to that, and he certainly didn't have any access to the staff report beforehand. But in order to try to get it in better shape for a complete presentation, we're gonna have to continue this one until the next meeting, so he can, if he can get a copy of
Sure.
Mr. Page's suggestions, right, and we can work on that. But I can say, I think I can say for the owner, without even talking to Mr. Houston, we're probably gonna have to come back in front of the commission for this arrangements of roads, because that's what he's suggesting is gonna be very detrimental to the thing, and I'm not sure this is gonna, because Green Tea's been designated as the route from 51 for AWG to Mackinville for 269. I don't know for sure, but I would suspect we're gonna have to have permissions from the highway department as well as the county for access roads to Green Tea. So it could be a little bit more complicated than just that. So we'll probably have to come back and discuss the road placement, but we can certainly address the rest of it if we can get this continued to the next meeting.
Table to the next meeting, is what you're
Yes.
requesting? Okay.
We need to make a motion to do that.
Yes. Do we have a motion to table this item?
I'll make a
until-
motion, I'll make a motion to table it.
All right, this is going to be the March 8th meeting.
Second that motion.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Thorne,
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan,
Aye.
Commissioner Brumbelow,
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins, Commissioner Ashworth,
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen.
Aye.
Motion to table until March 8th.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Page, we got item number 3, which is a request for a preliminary plat approval for the Oak Grove minor lot subdivision, 7 lots, 20.03 acres, located on the north side of West Oak Grove Road, west of Scott Road, and east of Oak Crossing Drive in Section 15, Township 3 South, Range 8 West.
Oh. This one was tabled at the last meeting. I would note that in your staff report, you know, one of the questions that was raised at the last meeting was how the remainder of the property was going to be dealt with. That what was originally proposed only dealt with a portion of the undeveloped part of that property. As you'll recall, the northern half of the property had been approved some time back as a planned unit development called Weatherby West or North, something like that. And then the south half was undeveloped. Then, of course, you had this proposal for the 7-lot subdivision, but it did not reflect all of the property. I have included in your staff report a copy of a plat that we received just shortly before the staff reports went out. It's like, I think, the second from the last page in your staff report. And basically what they are proposing to do is to leave the remainder of the property as a large Lot 8, which, you know, they have entirely the right to do. And the property does have frontage onto Oak Grove Road there. So it's compliant, you know, in all respects. It's obviously, you know, larger than, greater than, wider than all of the requirements for the A district. So it's a compliant lot, that's for sure. Now, in reviewing the plat, you know, essentially although we now have that information on the remainder of the property, basically they did not have the time apparently to make the remaining changes that I had included in my staff report from last month's meeting. So in terms of the proposed motion for approval of the preliminary plat, I have not changed any of the conditions from our last meeting. So since we went over those in detail at the last meeting, you know, unless somebody has any questions, that's my report.
Questions or comments for Mr. Page? Thank you, Mr. Page. Is there an applicant here on this item? Please, if so, please come forward stating your name and address.
Chase Dabbs, 3624 Madison Ridge. The reason on Lot 8, the reason we left it undeveloped the way it was, Lot 8 has a majority flood zone, so we left that undeveloped for that reason. We're willing to make the changes for the mailboxes, the cluster mailboxes and all of that. What else is there? Let's see what was not discussed. Lots 6 and 7 will maintain the ingress-egress easement. We will put a common open space by Lot 1 for the cluster mailboxes. Let's see. Also, speaking with Mr. Bailey, we're going to have 2,400 square foot house minimum square footage. I think that covers the few things I wanted to note. I'm open to any questions y'all might have.
I think one of the questions we were trying to figure out was how do you get the easement, how do you get it from Lot 6 and 7 from Oak Grove Road? Just on that easement?
Yes, sir. Across that 50-foot ingress-egress easement, which will be paved also, I might add.
It's going to be guttered?
No, sir. Not that I'm aware of.
Is it, I mean, that's just going to be a private drive.
Correct. Yes, sir. That 6 and 7 will share.
Who's going to maintain it?
6 and 7, 50-50.
Is that going to be in the restrictive covenants?
It will be.
Do you have a copy of those?
I do not. No, sir.
Are they completed?
I'm not sure. I'd have to check with Mr. Cronin.
I think that's something we talked about last time. Yeah. Nobody was here. We were concerned without seeing more that easement was just going to become an issue, that access easement that was going to become a burden on the city or on one landowner over the other.
Well, it'll be their responsibility to maintain it if they so choose to buy the lot, so I understand.
Have you had any conversations with the adjoining landowner about putting that road right up next to him, that access easement?
I have not, no, sir. And as to my knowledge, there hasn't been, but I'd have to consult with Mr. Cronin on that one.
I mean, I know that, is Mr. Cronin here?
No, sir. He had another thing going on, so I'm covering for him.
I mean, I guess that's my, I'm familiar with that area out there. Is there a reason that the access easement couldn't be between lot 2 and 3 or lot 4 and 3?
No reason other than that that was on the edge of the property, seemed to make the most sense. Less of a burden on the other people splitting their properties with a road in between it.
Is there any future, because I know the Weatherby West is right on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And this connects right up to the northern point.
It does, yes, sir.
Do you know of any future plan to run that easement all the way up north to connect?
I don't think there is one, no, sir.
Would that be in the covenants?
Again, I'd have to check with Mr. Cronin. I'm not 100% certain on that.
I think there's a good many questions that probably Mike needs to be here to answer, honestly.
Or you have to table it again?
Or Nick,
He's in Byhalia tonight, so.
I got Joey covering for me at another one too, so.
Do you?
Any other questions or comments from Mr. Dance?
There was one other question last time about sewer. It says that there'll be on-site sewer, but Mr. Page brought up the fact that it needs to be city sewer. It is a requirement.
Yes, sir. I know that's a requirement, just with this only being 7-lot development and it being such a long stretch of time to the nearest, it was not economically, I'd say, feasible to do it that way. That's why we were requesting to do on-site sewer.
And I don't know who makes that determination. It's not really us.
Well, I will tell you that basically I discussed this with Mayor Johnson. And his feeling was that, under the subdivision regulations, the decision to waive requirements rests with the Board of Aldermen. And, because I asked him, what did he feel I should do on this staff report? And he said that you should tell him to comply with the requirements of the ordinance, and then if the board wants to let him out of that requirement, that's the board's prerogative. And so that's why the staff report is written in that fashion.
This is a preliminary plat, I realize, and I guess this is a question for BJ. Are we, without the cluster mailboxes and without, it seems like we're premature on approving it without knowing where those, I didn't realize you said they were going to be carved out of lot 1, but that's going to change the plat. So do we need to have that? If we're tabling this, do we need to have that whenever we come back?
Well, it's basically up to how you guys want to handle it. When I formulate these motions, I try to look at it from the standpoint of, okay, if they're going to approve it, what all do we need to have in there? Okay? And it's up to you to decide whether that list of things is too much or not. Okay? And if you feel, that you need something before you feel comfortable with making a decision, then that's what you need to do. That's really your decision as the planning commission. You should be comfortable with whatever you're going to do, whichever direction you go. So if you feel like you want to see this list whittled down some, then, that's what you should do.
Did y'all have an opportunity to review, and we had a lot of concerns at the last meeting. Did y'all have an opportunity to review?
I have not had an opportunity to review it. Again, I have to check Mr. Cronin if he has.
I emailed Mr. Cronin a copy of the staff report after the last meeting.
I'm sure he has then.
At a minimum, I think we need the restrictive covenants so we can see how that easement's gonna be managed.
I don't disagree with that, and I think there's a lot to be addressed. It sounds like Mr. Cronin's got it. It'd be nice to have that broken down a little bit better,
Sure.
so we can look at it.
Or invite him to join us next time.
We'll do it.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here for or against this application? And if so, will you please come forward stating your name and address? Do I have a motion?
I think it's in Mike's best interest if we table it. I mean, we don't want to, that helps him, you know, so you guys can address some of this stuff, and it's just not denied, you know. I'll make a motion to table to the next meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Brumbelow?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen?
Aye.
Motion to table, we need to have a date that we need to, next meeting, March 8th. All right, Ms. Cobb, you get to have a turn. All right, the request to rezone 2.7 acres in 3 lots, lots 1, 2, and 4 of Grove Park Office Plaza subdivision from the O Office District to RM6 Residential Multifamily District, high density. The subject properties are located on both sides of Grove Park Office Drive, east of Interstate 55 and west of McInville Road in Section 7, Township 3 South, Range 7 West. All right, Ms. Cobb.
All righty, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. So, as you've stated, Mr. Chairman, this is a request to rezone the 2.70 acres south of Byhalia Road. And this 2.70 acres consists of 3 lots. They are lots 1, 2, and 4 of Grove Park Professional Office Plaza subdivision. And the request is from Mr. Vance Daly on behalf of Michael Austin, who is the applicant is Mr. Vance Daly on behalf of Mr. Michael J. Austin, the property owner. So the current zoning surrounding the subject properties are office to the west, and there is it may have been left out, but we have office zoning to the west and R12 residential single-family medium density zoning to the south and the east, and R6 residential single-family medium density zoning, as well as C1 neighborhood commercial zoning to the north. The future land use map of the general development plan does designate the subject rezoning properties as well as the surrounding area as single-family, low-density dependent. And the purpose of this land use designation is to provide for single-family detached dwellings. Recommended zoning for this designation, there are 3 different recommended zoning districts, and they are R12, R15, and R20. Therefore, the request to rezone to RM6 does not conform to the general development plan. And within the staff report, starting on page 2, there are the criteria that the applicant must demonstrate to allow for a zoning map amendment. And I'd like to point out that within number 1 on page 2, the current zoning of office was granted as a rezoning application and approved by the board in 2005, but that was also prior to the general development plan that was adopted in 2007. Also, our draft comprehensive, Hernando comprehensive plan does recommend the area consist of single-family detached housing on 0.5 acres or less. So lastly, the office has received communication from residents and people in the surrounding area. We did have a person who came into the office in opposition to the rezoning request. I also talked with a person who was in opposition to the request, and I believe she is here in the audience as well. And I did receive some emails in opposition to the request, which I gave you all a copy of. And that completes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? Ms. Cobb? Thank you, Ms. Cobb.
And we do have, I'm sorry, the applicant is in the audience for any additional questions that there might be.
Thank you. I will address a few housekeeping rules we're going to have tonight in regards to this item. Seems to be a pretty big audience. We're going to keep the time that you speak to 3 minutes. When our dinger goes off, it is done. We ask that that not be redundant in those coming up to speak. We do want to offer everyone to have a chance, but if it does become redundant, we may ask you to cut it short. So 3 minutes as of now. Redundancy will be asked to cut short, and that's just to allow everybody to have a chance to speak, if so. So just letting y'all know we're going to set that precedence on that for tonight. Will the applicant please come forward, state your name and address? Y'all don't throw darts at this guy, so.
Again, Vance Daly, I guess I've got a couple of addresses in Hernando, but one of them, 140 East Commerce Street, right in the middle of town. I'm here on behalf of Michael Austin, who, again, y'all heard the request. Y'all know what the request was for and have all the information in front of you. What is particular in these three? First of all, it's actually lots 2, 3, and 4, not 1. I think it's listed as lots 1, 2, and 4, but I think it's lots 2, 3, and 4. But it's the 3 empty lots sitting right around the Austin Realty building, okay? And so the layout of that land, the way that land is situated, with the creek running behind lots 3 and 4, or, excuse me, I'm getting confused now on my own. Yes, the creek running behind lots 3 and 4 is. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I stand sideways so everybody? Would you say your name? Vance Daly, I'm sorry. Hey, Vance Daly, I'm an attorney here in town, here on behalf of Michael Austin.
And also, he has to address the commission. So I will ask him to speak louder, and I apologize for that, but he does have to address the commission, not the audience.
So again, just getting into this, where it is again, the layout of these lots, back in 2005 it was approved, and then I guess it was actually platted in 2006 as a 4-lot office park, I guess is what it was. Michael Austin has lot 1, and in 2008 built the building that is sitting on that, on lot 1 now, and he's been there ever since, and to my understanding, you know. Do I need to stop?
No,
No.
you're good.
You
We're
know.
trying to make sure we can get
Does
the
this
microphone on.
microphone, if he gets closer to it, they can hear it in the back? Yeah, pull the mic to you a
Gotcha,
little bit because
okay.
it is hard for them to hear.
Sorry, okay. Anyway, Michael Austin is sitting on lot 1. I mean, he built a building in 2008, and that is his real estate business, and that's where he's been since 2008, and to my understanding, he's got no plans to go anywhere else, right? And so, however, lots 2, 3, and 4 have not taken. I mean, they've been sitting empty. Well, Lord, they've been sitting empty the whole time, right? But since 2006, when this was platted as a business park, that just never has come to fruition. These lots, I guess I get into this. These lots were turned back over to the bank, and they sat bank-owned for a long time with nothing happening to them. And so to get into the not conforming with the general development plan of Hernando back in 2007 when it was adopted and going forward. Yes, residential, these were hoping single-family residential, I said this whole area, single-family residential. The layout of these lots with the creek taking behind lots 2 and 3 and just how they are right next to what is now a commercial office building doesn't quite fit the concept of having single houses, single resident dwelling, detached garages as was submitted to fit on those 3. This is the entrance, I say the entrance, it is somewhat an entrance into the neighborhood behind it. And so to get into why the non-conforming use, just a single-family dwelling on these lots don't really fit that area, those 3 lots for this. Now, I get there is lots of concern over people hear townhomes and they think rentals and property values and all these things. To address where we are, this is an office park right now, or zoned office. Step 1 is the hope to get it rezoned to RM6. Step 2 would come back into, we now have to revise that plat. So, and that would come in with restrictive covenants and what can and can't be done there. We're not to that point yet because we can't revise an office plat to try to fit for residential. So in meeting with everyone and trying to figure out how to get this accomplished, step 1 is strictly seeking to get these rezoned as RM6 so that something residential could be put on it. Again, this is not an effort to hide, trick, do. The hope is some type of garden home type model houses on these lots if we can get there. However, what's being built on those is not before the commission yet, because again, this is just the effort to get it rezoned so that we can ultimately come back with a plat and go, hey, this is the hope to get, built on these things. But to address all of the concerns for everybody in the room, bringing the large crowd here. I've heard traffic is a concern. If offices were built on those 3 lots, way more traffic would be coming through than what would in homes. Just because if 3 other office buildings were built, it would bring in way more traffic than doing some type of garden homes on these things. Just because you look at the 3-story building that's there right now, I guess 2 are occupied in Michael Austin's building, but the amount of real estate agents and the amount of other people, I used to rent in that building, and so the flow of traffic in an office building would be way more volume than would whatever type garden homes would ultimately get put on there. Rentals, property values, all of these things, and I know I'm addressing you guys, but it's in large benefit for everybody in the back. Michael Austin is the one that is doing this in his own front yard. He is the one that has the building right there on lot 1 besides lot 2, 3, and 4 where this is seeking to be done. If anybody has an interest in property values, and anybody has an interest in making sure that these maintain values, and if anybody has an interest in making sure these homes are what they hope to be and continue to keep Hernando what it is, it's Michael Austin, because it will affect his property more than anybody else's in there. And so, if anybody knows Michael Austin, whatever he does, he's going to go overboard with it. I love him. Sometimes he goes way overboard. But again, this request is simply to get it rezoned, and then we will come back, hopefully, if this makes it through, with the plan, with a new plat that would show what can be built with types of restricted covenants that could, again, I am not at liberty and don't have the freedom to, get into whether or not they could be rented, whether or not they could do those things. Michael Austin has been in Hernando, I don't know how long he's been in Hernando. He is certainly open to ideas of meeting with everyone to get this done. This is not some out-of-town investor who's just hoping to come throw up something that's going to get run down and move on. Again, he literally is doing this in his own front yard. And so that's where we are. I will answer whatever questions I can.
I guess the comment that I'll make is that in looking at trying to put something there, something that conforms as opposed to doesn't conform there, you're talking about a low density going to a high density. Why that? What is the reasoning behind that? I mean, because then in sets, it doesn't look like that we're wanting to keep in character with everything because it's a non-conformance request.
Correct, absolutely. And again, I'm sorry.
No, so that's, one of the questions I had because in reading this, it was a non-conformance and, I'd want to conform, I'd want to reach out to the area to try to, work together first of all. And I don't know that hasn't been obtained, but where I would come with something that was a little more presentable in conformance.
Right.
And if it wasn't a non-conformance, it was still more presentable than this high-density zoning that you're requesting, or Mr. Austin's requesting.
Correct. A couple of things. One, layout of these lots, in large part, the creek behind the lots 3 and 4 significantly reduce your building site on that thing. And so what would be your standard single-family home with a yard and all those type things versus and again, I don't want to put ideas, so I don't know what yards and that type thing would ultimately come if we get there. But in any event, one, it's office, but that's a commercial building right there, right? I mean, it is a commercial building, and it's an office, but it's a commercial building. Single-family houses right next to this office building, again, don't quite fit that. This is an office park. This is a nuance because of what it currently is and what currently sits there. And so these lots are not a part of the neighborhood behind it. High density, again, the concept of RM6 was the lot size and what you could fit on those type lot sizes with setbacks and requirements and those type things. And so it is trying to do something that would actually get these lots from sitting empty like they've done. Well, again, I guess they've been sitting empty ever since, but it was platted in 2006 with an effort that something would go there, and we're in 2022 and they're still sitting empty because nobody saw the need to build other office buildings there. And so, again, it is trying to fit something in that because it is somewhat of a nuance, because it's not in the neighborhood. It's right there on the road, right next to a commercial building. Right across the street is a commercial. It's Dr. Paroli, Seymour Paroli's, dental. I forgot the name of the dental office, but it's another commercial thing right there. And so it is. It's just kind of fitting a nuance into what these 3 lots are, as opposed to that whole area. That makes sense.
Any other questions or comments from Mr.?
Yeah, just kind of following up, why not, why has he waited 14 years to build anything there if he's been there since, what, 05, 08?
What? He just bought them, I don't have it in front of me. He bought them last year sometime, bought these lots he didn't own them, no, he just bought them, I guess I can say this, he bought them from the bank. I mean, or again, they've been bank owned for, should have brought out that information. It's public record. Brian Hill had them, and I guess, I'm assuming Brian Hill's the one that did the plat on that. Brian Hill, again, when everything crashed.
So he's had them for about a year.
Yeah, I don't even think quite a year, 6 months.
He's already determined that extra office buildings won't work there?
Well, he's been there since 2008, so, in the office, I mean, he's the one that built the office building there, and so, he's in real estate, so.
No, I'm just, my perception, and whether it counts for anything, I think his concern is more about the value of those 4 lots than he is about the residents behind him.
Say that again now, I'm sorry.
I think his concern that those lots are sitting empty, that he's not being able to develop an office park there because it's not an interest in that neighborhood, that he has more interest in converting this or rezoning it so that he can sell it off, and he's more concerned about that value of those 4 lots than he is about the neighborhood behind him.
To some extent, but again, that's where I get into. Well, no, I mean, I say that to go, this is his front and backyard. I mean, whatever happens on those affects him more than the neighborhood behind him, and so it is.
His building's for sale.
Wait.
Hey, I'm going to call to order on this to please refrain from talking while the applicant's speaking and directing the commission. That is a respect factor. We want to give the same to you as a courtesy, so please refrain from the distraction and noise.
I'm just trying to find out why it already, according to our comment, our staff report, it doesn't conform to the general development plan. So I have to come to a reasonable conclusion on why I would approve this from its current zone to an RM6.
Right, I'm with you, and again,
And based on what you're saying, I don't see it right now other than I can't build an office park here because it won't sell, so I gotta do something else with it. That's the only reason I hear right now.
Correct. I mean, and again, I did not get into all of his reasoning behind. He was hey, go help get this rezoned. But again, presumptively, nobody wants to go invest in something that's not going to work. And so, yes, I'm sure that is to some extent. You know, there is a big risk in building office buildings that nobody comes to rent versus, good gravy, homes in Hernando right now are going crazy. But you can put your house on Facebook tonight and have it sold tomorrow. You know, and so. Yes, I'm sure that is a factor in it.
And that's our responsibility, to look at what we have in front of us and look at, if I bought a piece of property last year that I'm gonna invest in, and then I don't know how to invest it, so let's change my mind so I can get, that's where I'm struggling with right now.
Well, it was zoned office when he bought it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, he knew, and
Absolutely.
so he knew the layout of the land, and he knew that if there was gonna be difficulty in putting offices there, he would have known that when he was buying it.
Absolutely. He didn't buy
He's been
them to
there
plan to
for
put
13
offices on them. I mean, I think his goal in buying them the whole time was to do something with them and put some form of residential something on there. Now, what is taking this long, Lord, it could be large part on his lawyer
there's
taking
there's a
enough
lot
time
of
to get here
ideas
and do it.
Especially
So,
with the paradigm shift we have with people working from home. Hernando doesn't have a co-working space. That's a perfect space for something like that, and it's not commercial, and it's not townhomes. I mean, there's plenty of ideas.
correct. I mean, yeah, the ideas are limitless, absolutely. I'm not going to argue with that.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Daly? Thank you, Mr. Daly. Again, before I call for anyone to be for or against this application, I'm going to remind you, you will be held to a 3-minute time limit. If it becomes redundant, we will ask you to cut that short. So at this time, I will be asking, is there anyone for or against this application to please come forward and state your name and address.
Yes, my name is Michael Flynn. My address is 708 Bending Oak Cove. I am the president of the HOA for the Grove Park subdivision. We back up directly to Mr. Austin's property. I had a list of things here that I was going to mention to you, but thank you to Mr. Daly for basically making my case for me. He mentioned they're looking at rezoning this to the RM6 multifamily, but we have seen no plan of anything. This sounds a lot like the federal government saying you have to pass it before you can see it. I'm not really on board with that. I have no idea what they're intending to build. They're going to have restrictive covenants. I have no idea what that is. I have no guarantee that there will be any kind of covenants in there. Of the 129, 130 homes we have in our subdivision, not one resident has contacted me in favor of this. And I don't know if we have any folks here from Lakes of Cedar Grove, but I have talked to their HOA president. Not one resident in that community has said, gee, this is a great idea. I'm sorry that Mr. Austin paid money for this property, but besides the fact that this is going to be a traffic nightmare for Grove Park Office Drive, it is a narrow little road. You put 20 homes in there. The traffic is going to be horrible. These are probably going to be small homes with very little driveway space. Cars are going to be lined up along the street. We're going to have traffic issues. I know he says that offices attract more traffic. I respectfully disagree with that. We have an office building now there that Mr. Austin owns, which to my understanding is up for sale. So when he says he's building this in his backyard, I think he's got his backyard up for sale and planning on getting the heck out of town. He doesn't have a home there. I do. And so do 130 other people in my subdivision. So we have a sincere concern over what these multifamily homes are going to be. I've heard they're going to be for 55 and older, but I don't know that. For all I know, some investor's going to come in and buy them out and rent them out. What are they going to end up looking like in 5 years? This is not the type of development Hernando needs in this area. It is going to depreciate all of our home values. I'm sure Mr. Austin would stand up here and tell you that more people moving in means more tax base for us. But I hope it's enough to offset the depreciation in my taxes. Not to mention when half of our neighborhood starts putting our homes up for sale, because we don't want this in our front yard, not our backyard. He said that single-family homes right there are not possible and they don't match next to an office building. I don't see how multifamily homes match either. They certainly don't match my home. You know, we're not here to oppose Mr. Austin's idea to develop anything. If he could come up with a plan that would complement our neighborhood, we'd be open to his suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here for or against this application? Please state your name and address.
David Geyer, 815 Cedar Trace Cove, and I live in Lakes of Cedar Grove. And I don't want it for multiple reasons, and ditto to everything he said. He said most of everything, and I appreciate you gentlemen asking the questions you ask, and for the planning, this is the planning board, right, for them doing their homework. But the traffic we have is bad enough for people cutting through from Byhalia over to McInville. We don't need any additional, and our properties are full, and so is theirs, and it seems like we make decisions to allow things, and we haven't planned on how we're going to handle traffic patterns for multiple things, not just this. But anyway, thank y'all.
Thank you. Anyone else here for or against?
Corey Patrick, 1310 Bending Oak East. Also live in Grove Park neighborhood, but I'll shorten mine since Mike covered a lot of it. I think the main point that everybody's kind of getting at is there are certain locations in Hernando where something like this may be appropriate, where it's easy access to restaurants, retail, stuff like that. There's walkable areas. This is not one of those locations. This development will not blend at all with the existing neighborhood. If these lots can be sold as daytime offices, the owner should try to divide it into 4 to 5 lots. I know 2.7 acres, if you divide that by 5, that's a bigger lot than the majority of the people in our neighborhood. And there's people in our neighborhood with a creek in the back of it. And I'm 100% sure they'd be able to sell those lots as a residential, just like we have, immediately. So I'll keep that short.
Thank you.
I'm Jody Hubbard. I live at 1417 Bending Oak Drive West. I'm about 5 houses down from where this would be built at. And with that creek said that is behind all of this where this would be built, that creek is eroding behind my house currently, and like I don't have a fence in my backyard because of that. So I would like to know their plans on that lovely creek and their development where that would be coming in at. There's also traffic, most certainly is definitely an issue for me in front of my house. That is a huge concern for me, and I'm also with Michael Flynn on that. Just the traffic alone, the building and the office now, there's really not an issue there. But I do think houses and the parking on the street along the Grove Park Office Drive would certainly be an issue. My neighbor had a hit and run accident happen on our street, just as is now. So I can't imagine what would come upon, just more of what we already have with the cut through from school traffic and everything alone as is. I like it being quaint and plain and nothing being there as is. If something else lovely and wonderful came upon it to be, so be it, but totally opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim Grillo, 662 Bending Oak North. I agree with the city planner and her recommendation. I hope everyone on this commission listens to that recommendation, goes along with it. If you look at our development, the next road west, which is Green Tea that turns into Bending Oak, is houses all the way out. I don't know why they zoned that small section right there office, but it should really be houses all the way out to Byhalia where those come out. So I hope you guys follow that development plan and do what's right for our neighborhood.
Anyone else here?
Thank you. Robin Cotton, 719 Roanoke Place, 3 words. I want to speak about the integrity of neighborhoods in Hernando. I bought a house, I built a house, so did everybody else out here, knowing that there were not going to be any starter home apartments or townhouses or whatever you want to call them in there. So I spent a lot of money, I investigated, that's the place I wanted to move. If we start messing up the integrity of our neighborhoods, you're going to have a problem with people looking. I would guess that 1/4 of the people that enter Hernando to look for a place to live come down that street. They're coming from the north, and that's a main artery into commerce into Hernando. They would see that, and they would think to themselves, my goodness, this is no different than South Haven and Horn Lake. They're putting starter home apartment looking places in old neighborhoods. And we're going to look at a new neighborhood. And what are they going to do when we get out there? So it's going to hurt Hernando's whole industry. It's going to hurt us, but it's also going to hurt the new neighborhoods going up. It's going to hurt the integrity and the charm of Hernando. And the last thing is we got 130 houses out there and about 300 votes. So if you might want to pass that on to your alderman. Thank you. Any questions?
I'm Melissa Loper, 1399 Bending Oak West. I just wanted to kind of speak to the safety of the area. I'm a single woman. I live alone. I have no children. When I first started living in the area, I was actually living with a friend, and I actually purchased the home from her. Half the appeal of moving from Bartlett in the Memphis area was that feeling of neighborhood and that feeling of safety. And I feel like whenever I've lived in an apartment, you run the risk of not knowing your neighbors, not knowing who's coming in and out, and you don't have the ability to kind of keep tabs on one another like you would in our neighborhood now. I just think it's important to note that when you have a tight-knit community, we're able to keep more of the riffraff out, and if we were to bring more people in and potentially turn those into rentals, then not only will the property value, like so many other people have said, have plummeted, but I think we're going to have more trouble for our children, more trouble for our homes, and we're going to be bringing in more crime into our neighborhood, which is something that was the appeal of Hernando to begin with. So, thank you.
Sarah Langston, 620 Bending Oak Circle. I know that right now those lots are zoned office. I have noticed the sign across from Dr. Seymour's, 5 acres for sale. If you continue with this zoning of the office or changing it to residential, whatever that he's wanting to put, what's going to go right there? How those people that are going to buy that 5-acre lot, is it going to be the same? I mean, you know, that's something to say. And that's right there on both communities right there. So if this is approved for him to change it, then whoever buys that 5-acre lot, they're going to be able to do the same thing. And there you go. You've got riffraff right there, that whole circle. So I'm in agreement with all these people here. We are not in disagreement of having homes there, because we all know we need homes in Hernando, but they need to be in accordance with our subdivision. So please consider that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Whitman. I live at 714 Bending Oak North. I'm a transplant from Atlanta, and when I got transferred to Memphis, I looked for a small town community, somewhere that, you know, I've done the Atlanta thing. What happens is you start doing things like this and people move out further and further and further because they're trying to get away. My commute in Atlanta was an hour and a half. And when I'm sitting here listening to multifamily coming into my neighborhood, that's not what I signed up for. In 2005, I bought at the top of the market They did tell us that that was going to be commercial. They were going to be just like what was built there now. I mean, it was nice, neat. During the day, the guys there, there might be 4 cars there during the day. We're not talking like a lot of traffic. Also, if you think, and I understand Mr. Austin purchased this property from the bank, but we all know he got it for pennies on the dollar. So, I just ask that as the board, you think about people wanting to come into these community. Things like this makes us want to leave the community. So please just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Ms. Miller, you get a minute and a half.
So for the record, everyone knows who I am. My name is Valerie Miller. I'm at 1362 Bending Oak East. I completely disapprove with this groundbreaking stuff, whatever that has to do with those lots. And Michael Flynn, our president of HOA, has already touched on everything perfectly, so I do not want to be overly redundant. However, I will just say, as I said earlier, one thing is clearly known. It's just a known fact that rental properties do bring down an area, a community, a subdivision. And, as some of the other residents have said too, crime and traffic and stuff. So I just want to officially, since I'm in the right section at this point of the hearing, so I don't embarrass myself any further, I do not agree with this, with this groundbreaking, rezoning. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Glenn Steele, and I live at 741 Bending Oak North. I was the 4th or 5th occupied house in the whole neighborhood, and that's the reason. That there were other houses built, but we were the 4th one occupied. We have very strict covenants about what we have to do. If I want to build a garage, it has to match the house. Everything has to be done that way, which is adjacent to this, and it seems to me that it's going to be something that is not conforming to the way our covenants are. And so I just, I think that I have to oppose this simply because it's not conforming to our neighborhood.
Hey, my name's Dana McNett. My address is 6845 Vaden Road. I work for Michael. And I'm just here to represent him, and I just have to say, I don't feel like he would do anything, and everybody keeps talking about riffraff and rentals. First of all, no one said anything about rentals. I'm in the real estate business myself, so I don't feel like they're gonna be rentals, and I don't feel like it's gonna be riffraff. And I think it's just worth an option just to see what the layout would be, instead of just automatically judging that it's going to be riffraff and it's going to be horrible and it's going to be the worst thing ever. Sorry. Thank you.
Again, I'm going to ask y'all to please keep your distractions down as everybody speaks. It's a respect factor, whether you agree with them or not, as we're giving each person here.
Thank you. My name is Melanie Drisdale. I live at 781 Madison Circle. That is in Grove Park. I, of course, don't want to be redundant, so I'm not going to say all the things Mr. Flynn said, but I will say all of DeSoto County is facing these rentals. It's not a surprise. Houses are going up for sale, and companies out of California are buying them and turning them into rentals. Not even 2 years ago, at the end of our street on Madison Circle, law enforcement agents came in, federal, and seized that house and arrested the rental owner, or the rental individual, as a meth dealer. He was a meth dealer on our street in Madison Circle. He was renting that home. We do everything we can to keep the rentals out of the actual real estate market, but if you put multifamily up there, those developers from all over this country, they're buying it up like wildfire, and they will place them as rentals, and we will have meth dealers and God knows what else in there. Thank you.
I'm Rod Robinson, 1342 Bending Oak East, and I agree with everything Michael was saying earlier.
And my only question is if Michael Osteen, if he had our interest in heart, why isn't he here answering our questions? That's all I need to say.
Thank you. Seems like the common consent is everyone here is pretty much against. Okay, so as it is becoming a little redundant, I'm going to ask if you are for this application in any format to please come forward. Otherwise, I think we've heard the majority of this room in speaking out against it, giving your reasons. And I would ask that we proceed with moving forward with this item. Last chance for a for this application. You're more than welcome to come back up and being your for.
Do I?
Being
No,
your for.
absolutely. Obviously, I'm for it, to address some of the things that were said. Why is Michael Austin not here to answer the questions? One, the way this meeting landed and scheduled, he's out of town this week. He and his wife are out on a business trip this week. He's not here, and so otherwise, he would be here. If we need to table it to get him here so that people can be here and look at him in the face, we will gladly do that. Dana mentioned this, but to address, everybody hears multifamily, and they assume rentals. Again, we're not to that point yet. We're trying to get to that point, but if we make it to that point, these will be very high-end garden-type homes, not like multifamily in the sense of apartment complexes where we have all the rip-rap coming in and drug dealers. I mean, we've already figured out there's going to be meth dealers living in these places, and the police are going to be over there. Like, we're not even there yet. Again, the hope is these will be very high-end, and again, Michael Austin's using the term garden-type homes, which I guess are townhome-type, they're individual homes that are pretty much connected, in one building-type deal. Is the hope to get there, and in order to build those, it's got to be rezoned. It's got to be zoned these type RM6 or maybe RM8. I can't remember which. But getting into, there is no discussion of rentals. There is no discussion of all these type things. Again, to remind people, Michael Austin is right there in lot 1 of these other lots. To address we don't know what the plan is. This is almost government where hey, just accept this blindly. The process in this hopeful, or the steps in this hopeful process is, first it would have to be rezoned. Then you come back to work on the plat and get approved what will be built there, what restrictions would be there, what everybody would agree to, and that is the point at which all of the input comes in to go, hang on, this is what they're attempting to build there. Again, this isn't some underhanded end around, try to hide, pull a blind over somebody and just blindly accept it. The next step would be, if we make it past this step, the next step is come back to the commission and do it all over again, seeking to get the plat revised, because again, you couldn't, I'm repeating myself, but come into the public forum of going, okay, this is now the hopeful plan and design for these things, and that's where all the input comes in, and that's where, you address on the street parking and put a restrictive covenant in to keep people from parking on the street. And again, I'm totally speaking out of term here or outside my authority, but maybe even put a restrictive covenant in that says, hey, these can't be rented. Like that happens in neighborhoods all the time where there's a restriction that says you can't rent these things. And so I get it. Everybody is concerned about these things because they hear townhomes or multifamily or whatever it is, and they automatically assume the worst case scenario, and from rentals, and it's terrible, and all these things happen. I get it. People do not take care, if somebody's renting, they do not take care of stuff the same way they do if they own it, which is, again, my neighborhood recently went through their own effort to keep people from being able to rent stuff, to rent homes in the neighborhood. I get that concept, but again, that step will totally be addressed if we make it past this step. The hope is, let's put something on those lots that will work and that will benefit Hernando. There is a great need for more houses in Hernando. Good gravy. I love this place. I live in this town. I love this place. Houses are selling like crazy, and land inside of Hernando is hard to come by. And so there's not a lot of available spots inside Hernando. And so the effort is not to end around, to do something dirty. If they make it there, these will be high-end garden home type thing, homes that, again, I mean, I can say there is no plan for rentals, you know. So again, just trying to, I know I'm not going to change everybody's mind in this room, but again, just to address from a public perception concept, like this is not an effort to end around or do something dirty. I mean, really, this is all for the betterment. Obviously, he's got an interest in this. I mean, he's the one doing it, investing his money in it. So yes, there is, you know, there is a financial aspect to all of this. But again, Michael Austin lives in Hernando. His office is right there in these. Like, this is not just a total, let's get the money and go make some money off of these things. I mean, these are, he's in it.
Mr. Chairman, can we limit him to 3 minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm done. Okay. I'm done.
All right, I'll end with this, and the fact of this is, although we value what could potentially go here, this is for a rezoning, and a rezoning only, not plat of townhomes or anything, and that is what we are voting on tonight as a commission. So we appreciate all the input, and
May I ask one quick question? If you vote to rezone it, what happens if the plan is later turned down? What happens to the zoning as it is right now?
Ms. Cobb, would you like to respond to that one?
So at this point, this would be a recommendation from the Planning Commission. So it would be a recommendation from the Planning Commission, and then it would go to the Board of Alderpersons. And the board would make the ultimate decision. Not quite sure I answered that question, but if this request is denied, it still has to go before the board. If the board denied the request, then it still would be zoned office as is.
I think what he was asking is if the rezoning is approved, but nothing proceeds onto the property, what will happen with the zoning?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct? So will the
Would it
zoning
revert
remain
back to office or
RM6?
stay as it's rezoned? And then we'll fight this battle again.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if the rezoning is approved, then it would remain RM6. So that would be the board's determination. If it is rezoned, it would be RM6, and the single-family detached or attached properties that are permitted in RM6 could potentially be at that location.
Thank you.
And I just want to say one thing for clarity. Mr. Daly, and for anyone else and for the future, it doesn't hurt. I mean, if you have your plans and restrictive covenants, it doesn't hurt to give us an idea. You can always do that and bring those in when you request something like a rezoning.
Again, I have no thought, I do not believe there are any restrictive covenants even thought about. Now, I have only a concept of what Michael Austin is thinking about doing, but again, hasn't even made it there because we don't even know what would fit and all those type things. But I mean,
So we need to proceed with this vote so that would be presented whether or not, so.
I just want to point out that can be provided.
Yes, sir, Ms. Page.
One thing I did want to mention for the benefit of the audience, as Ms. Cobb mentioned, whatever action the Planning Commission takes is a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen, okay? The board will hear this item at their meeting on March 15th. They meet at 6 o'clock in this room on March 15th. So whether the Planning Commission votes to approve it or deny it, that recommendation will go to the board, and the board will make the final decision. So if you are concerned about this rezoning, you would want to attend that meeting as well. So that's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to ask for a motion.
I recommend a motion to deny. A motion to recommend denial of rezoning request by Mr. Vance Daly on behalf of Michael J. Austin, owner of the property, 2.7 acres identified as parcel numbers 307-307-280-0000100, lot 1, 307-307-280-000000200, lot 2, and 307-307-280-0000400, lot 4, located east of Interstate 55, west of Mackinville Road, and south of Byhalia Road in Section 7, Township 3 South, Range 7 West, from current zoning O, Office District, to RM6 Residential Multifamily District, high density, based on the following findings, items 1, 2, and 3.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Brumbelow?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins? Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen?
Aye.
The motion to deny passes. At this time, I know we have a large audience. If you're willing to stay, feel free. If not, I'm going to give just a little break before announcing the next item.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to also, for the record, incorrectly, it was listed Lot 1 in the staff report, so that should be Lots 2, 3, and 4, as Mr. Daly mentioned.
Do we need to reread all that? Redo the motion.
No, we'll just amend it on the record. We'll get
Say triple miles, quadruple miles. Yeah, I should have. Come on, you didn't remember that, Kevin? Why couldn't you get that right?
Thanks, Mr. Davis.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only hair I can grow.
Rival rouse.
I understand.
Rival rouse.
Good job. I was going to make it to 3. Yeah, I know. I started to because I also said you're 4. So.
Can't limit the representative.
I started because
Right through class, he can say.
Oh, gosh, yes. I mean, yeah. Remember in the initial part.
I said
Not just the second part.
You did good as far as.
When I made that comment, you stood back, I was like, I was like, dang, did I do that?
Again, we're going to ask y'all, if you're not wanting to stay for the next item, to please exit the building so we can get back to order with the meeting. All right, Ms. Cobb, we've got item number 5, which is a request to rezone .4 acres and 2 parcels from the R10 Residential Single Family District to the R8 Residential Single Family District. The subject properties are located on south side of East Valley Street, east of Northview Street, and west of Northern Street in Section 13 and 18, Township 3 South, Range 7 and 8 West.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself on this one.
All right.
Just in the hall.
Close the door.
Mr. Ashworth, is he?
Did Mr. Where is
Oh, Mr. Ashworth's not back from the restroom.
Yeah. I'm missing the chair, I'm missing the commissioner.
We'll have a short break. We're waiting on Commissioner Ashworth to return from a break. He did. He took a break.
To the restroom, I think. Oops.
All right, while we're on break, I have a question.
All right, Ms. Cobb.
Okay, another rezoning. So this request is made by Mr. Greg Smith on behalf of Miller Farms. And the request is to rezone the .40 acres from R10 residential single-family medium density to R8, which is also residential single-family medium density. This subject rezoning is for 2 lots, and it's just south of East Valley Street. Surrounding zoning in the area, which you do have a copy of that map in the staff report. So we have R10 zoning that is to the northeast and the west, and then C2 zoning, which is Highway Commercial District, which is to the south. Our future land use map designates the area as mixed use. And within the general development plan, the mixed use designation does include subsets of the mixed use category, and all of those designations are recommending either a planned unit development, a traditional neighborhood development, or C3 zoning. And the request for these subject properties seem to most closely align with the neighborhood mixed use designation and recommended zoning for the neighborhood mixed use designation is planned unit development or PUD, or also TND, traditional neighborhood development. So this request to rezone to R8 does not conform to the general development plan. Also, our draft Hernando comprehensive plan designates the area as suburban neighborhood, medium, and that recommends single-family detached houses on 0.5 acres or less. If you look on any of the maps that are included in the staff report, to the east of the subject properties for rezoning is a small PUD development, and those are for townhomes that actually were rezoned in July of 2016, and they were rezoned to the planned unit development district. And the department has not received any feedback in opposition to or in favor for this rezoning request. Also, if the rezoning is approved, a site development plan would be required to be submitted and also approved by you all, the Planning Commission. And I am happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments for Ms. Cobb?
If it's already R10, why go to R8? I guess what is the purpose of rezoning if it's already residential?
It's not.
It's currently zoned R10, and that might be a question for the applicant, but it possibly rezoning to R8 might have to do with the size of the lot, because with the R10 zoning district, you're required to have 10,000 square feet. R8 zoning allows the minimum lot area to be 8,000 square feet.
I think if you look at your attachments, what you should notice is that these properties, or I should say the property that's seeking to be rezoned, are actually part of 2 narrow properties that run all the way through to Commerce Street. And basically, those properties are zoned, C2 to the south.
Yeah, I see it.
And so basically, they're looking to create 2 residential lots on Valley Street. And as Ms. Cobb mentioned, I think the rezoning is because of the size of the lots that would be created.
So also because of that, there would need to be a final plat. So the platting would have to be approved.
Is there any other R8 in that area? On the zoning map that was provided, I didn't see any, but Is there any other R8 along Valley Street right there?
From what I can recall of the zoning map, I do not remember seeing any R8 zoning nearby. But this is also going off of my memory, off of what's on the zoning map.
To the east of that. Do you know what that zoning would be, or that, just to the east of that, kind of behind Bancorp South, that area? Because if I remember correctly, those were smaller lots.
So this would be
Oh, yeah, that's right, it was PUD, yeah, that's right, my bad. It was.
the townhomes?
Yes, that was a PUD.
Yes, yes, and they were R10.
Okay.
And Ms. Cobb, also, and I realize we're not doing a final plat approval, so it's hard to tell. And I was having difficulty telling as well. I mean, I would think that they're gonna need ingress and egress to the rear of those commercial buildings. I'm assuming from that lot, but there's nothing on there about that.
Probably applicant question.
Okay.
That would have to be addressed with the replatting and then also the site development plan,
I
which.
think if you go to the zoning map, which is kind of blown up a little bit, I think what you'll see is that there is asphalt behind the buildings that's partially covered up by the red line that shows the property to be rezoned. So I think it's just a matter of the way the line, you know, the width of the line has kind of covered up the access to the rear of the buildings, you know, that you see there.
And then also with the replatting, you know, you would have to maintain the proper setbacks, so that definitely would come into question at that time.
Just based on your earlier comments, instead of R10 to R8, you were suggesting a T&D instead, or PUD?
So that's based on the general development plan. So PUD or TND is the recommended zoning for the mixed use designation.
Any other questions or comments for Ms. Cobb? Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Is the applicant here? And if so, will you please come forward stating your name and address?
How y'all doing tonight? My name is Greg Smith with Mendrop Engineering. I'll be as brief as I can due to the drawn-out nature of this meeting. I know
What's your
everybody's
address,
tired.
Mr. Mendrop?
Mendrop Engineering.
Yeah, address.
My address is 2595 Country Club Road, Senatobia.
Thank you.
To answer a few of the questions y'all have had, the existing property there is one whole piece from West Valley Street all the way down to Commerce. My client bought that entire piece, which was the old Fred's building was at. As most of you probably know, they've turned that into a flooring store now, repaved the parking lot, and added a divider out on Commerce Street to help the traffic flow better in that area, which goes to some of the changes in the neighborhoods that's required for me to speak about. As far as the reason we want this zoning, whether it be PUD, R8, or whatever, he's still gonna do the same thing with the lots. We've got about enough room for two 9,000 feet lots, which is 1,000 feet short of the 10,000 we need. And in order for it to be feasible for him, he needs to do at least two homes in there of significant size, rather than just one home there. It just wouldn't be feasible for him to address that. And the homes he's gonna put in there, we're talking about 2,900 foot homes. So, now I know I'm not supposed to talk about that, but that was some information that was given to me by my client. We just feel like the R8 zoning would just fit right in that little area right there. Because, you know, you have all the commercial, you have C2, C1, you got office, and you've got the PUD over there, which is the West Lane townhomes. And the PUD is gonna be geared more for people who's gonna come in with something like that, where you would have more restrictions on the type of building and maybe the walkways and the amenities and that thing. We just wanna build two houses, two nice houses, and I have pictures of those if you'd like. It's the long, narrow and long style houses that you would put on narrow lots.
Like a shotgun house?
No, not like a shotgun house at all. Shotgun houses, I'm very familiar with, being from Charleston, Mississippi. Shoot a shotgun from one end to the other, it's not like that. Everything that, for those of you who know my client, we do several subdivisions going on in Hernando, and he does quality work, and this would be no different. And as far as to address the access, The access to the commercial lot, they have access to the west side of their building, and there will be some access left on the back of their property there. We'll have to meet all the setback requirements for both lots, because we'll have to divide this should the rezoning pass. I've talked about the changes in the neighborhood, and I really think there's not much else to address. All the other issues we've talked about have hit on the other two questions that required to be talked about, you know. I do feel like in a mixed-use district, to me, that's like in you have my report and your report, mixed use is a mixture of all the things, which is currently what's there now. And we feel like an R8 zoning would fit our needs better than just about anything else. Because whether we go PUD or R8, he's going to have the same product on the lots. So that's the only thing I really had to say. Unless you had any questions of me, I'd be glad to try to answer. So.
Why is one large home not feasible?
Well, it's, you know, one large home on a 20,000-foot lot or 19,000-foot long on one small home, you'd have to probably build a smaller home to make it feasible, you know.
I'm talking about on both, I'm talking about if you use both lots.
There's only one lot there, we got to divide it, but in order to divide it, we can only have 9,000 square feet, which means we have to go to an R8 zone, have to reduce the requirement. R10, the way it's zoned now, we'd have to have two 10,000 feet lots, and we don't have room to do that.
Well, why don't you just leave it one lot?
I'd rather put two in, that's pretty simple.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Smith? Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here for or against this application? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve a rezoning request by Greg Smith on behalf of Miller Farms LLC, Butch Davis, owner of the property of .40 acres identified as parcel numbers 30861, 3001, 0012700, and 30741, 8002, 0005, 100, located on the south side of East Valley Street, Township 3.
Is located on the south side of Nesbitt Road, west of Winningham Drive, and east of Jefferson Davis Cove in Section 25, Township 2 South, Range 8 West, currently zoned M1, Light Industrial District.
Okay. I think everybody's familiar with the Nesbitt Industrial Park. We have approved a couple of subdivisions, you know, of individual lots, you know, in the development. And actually, we have two buildings that are in the current pipeline for approval for construction down there. That is the reason why this issue has come up. Basically, I've set out for you in your staff report the design review requirements. You know, where a pitched roof are utilized, the primary roof form shall be on a slope of no less than 612. Okay? In addition to that, you know, pitched roofs that are less than 612 and do not meet the ordinance requirements can be utilized if they are screened by a parapet. Okay? And Article 7 also states that stage-set facades are prohibited. The continuity of design goes beyond the primary elevation of the building. Materials and colors of the street face shall continue on the sides and the rear of the building. And of course, you also have the provision concerning parapet facades that may be used when of unified construction with the primary surface of the wall. So basically, you know, we have these provisions that, you know, if you have a pitched roof, it's got to be 612. If it's less than 612, it's got to be screened by a parapet wall. Now, as I said, these two lots that have come into our office recently have pitched roofs of 212. You know, so they're less than the 612 that's required by the ordinance. And the building design has a parapet on the front of the building, but not on the other three sides of the building. Now, where this has become kind of an issue for us is the fact that under 2 or 3 previous planning directors, buildings in this development have been approved using that same design. There are somewhere around 10 buildings out there that are built exactly like this, with a parapet on the front, not on the other 3 sides, and with 212 pitch roofs, okay? Plus, we know that the applicant's intention, as you can probably see if you look at the aerial photograph, there's still a substantial amount of property that's left in this Nesbitt Industrial Park property remaining to be developed. And we know that those lots are going to be developed by the property owner. He's going to build the buildings. He's going to wants to follow this same design throughout that industrial park development. So, in looking at this, it seemed to me that it made more sense that we look at this as a variance for the development rather than having to deal with this same request time after time after time as each successive building is built. Okay? If you decide to deny it, then that sets the tone for the rest of the development. If you approve it, again, that addresses the rest of the development, and either way, we don't have to worry with it again. Okay? I have given you the applicant's responses to the 4 criteria required for variance, as well as the staff comments, and I have also given you a proposed motion for approval as well as a proposed motion for denial with the appropriate findings for each. And of course, if you feel that you need additional time to consider this application or additional information that you do not have at this time, you can always table the request. So that's my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Questions or comments for Mr. Page? Thank you, Mr. Page. Will the applicant please come forward stating your name and address?
Hello again, Greg Smith, Mendrop Engineering, 2595 Country Club Road, Senatobia, Mississippi. As Mr. Page said, you have my responses to all the 4 questions. I would add that I know many of you may have driven through there. If you're not, we invite you to, because we have some nice looking buildings out there. Like I said, Mr. Davis and Mr. Luzier, they don't do anything that's substandard. And like Mr. Page said, all the buildings out there, with the exception of one on the commercial side, which is the north end, they all have single parapet buildings with 212 roof pitches. And that's what we only ask, is that we continue to do that, because they've kind of gotten in a rhythm, and seeing all the past approvals of what they've got in anticipation of getting these buildings started. They've already got steel on the ground for 2 more buildings. I think 2 more buildings steel's on the ground for, which, and the reason that is, we've been allowed to do it this way, and it's not that we're trying to circumvent anything. I think it was simply that we just did not know, or the builder did not know, and nobody told him any different on that, which is not an excuse, but we'd just like to continue what we're doing, so everything out there look nice and look the way that we have everything else out there, basically. So with that, I'll answer any questions you may have on it. So that's really all I have.
Questions or comments for Mr. Smith? Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Yes, thank you.
Is there anyone here for or against this application? Please come forward, state your name and address. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Let me find the motion. I'll make a motion to approve a design review variance to allow construction of light industrial buildings within the Nesbitt Industrial Park with 2-on-12 pitch roofs, but without extending a screening parapet wall on all sides of the building except on the front elevations of the buildings. The Nesbitt Industrial Park Subject property is located on the south side of Nesbit Road, west of Winningham Drive, and east of Jeff Davis Cove in Section 25, Township 2 South, Range 8 West, based upon findings A through D.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Thorn?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Brumbelow?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen?
Aye.
Motion to approve carries.
Thank you all.
All right, item number 7, Ms. Cobb, request for a design review variance to allow the construction of additional parking serving the Hernando Baptist Church with the following modifications. 1, allow parking spaces 10 foot wide by 18 foot deep rather than the required 10 by 20 dimensions. 2, allow two-way traffic aisles ranging in width from 21 foot wide to 24 foot wide rather than the required 25 foot width. 3, allow elimination of the required concrete curb and gutter along the eastern boundary of the parking lot. 2, allow for proper stormwater drainage, and allow elimination of the public sidewalk requirement along the east-south street frontage of the new parking lot. Subject property is located on the south side of East Center Street and the north side of East South Street, west of Ice Plant Lane and east of School Street in sections 13 and 18, townships 3 south, ranges 7 and 8 west, currently zoned in the office district in the R10 residential single-family district.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a design review variance request stemming from a certificate of development review done within the office for the Hernando Baptist Church to accommodate additional parking on site. And the request for the additional parking, as you stated, includes the 4 modifications to the site plan. I would like to note that on pages 1 and 2 of the staff report, there are the sections from our design standards ordinance that apply to each of the 4 modifications that are requested. And then also starting on page 3 of the staff report are the responses to the specific findings that the Planning Commission must make in order to approve or deny this request for a design review variance. And lastly, I passed out the motions page with the 3 different motions possible. That's a separate document from the staff report.
Any questions or comments for Ms. Cobb? Thank you, Ms. Cobb.
Thank you.
Will the applicant please come forward stating your name and address?
Good evening, Jared Darby, 187 State Line Road East, South Haven, Mississippi. I'm a congregation member for Hernando Baptist, representing this application. Along with me is the civil engineer for the project, Ben Womble. To his immediate right is senior pastor Dr. David Williamson, and to his right, church administrator Ron Leonard. Also, previous civil servant for the city of Hernando that was recently tossed under a bus. I didn't think we were doing 4 variances. Thought it was just 3, and that was the removal of the curb and the repositioning of the sidewalk, and also the change of the drive aisles and the parking spaces. I guess we could count that as 2 moving forward. As you can imagine, the topography and the infilled status of the church where it's located in the parking area is going to be pretty difficult to meet all the design standards and try to get as many parking places as we can for our congregation. Currently, right now, our congregation parks in the existing parking area across the school board and their parking area, the park down the way as well and across the street with several of the businesses. Obviously, those businesses aren't open on Sundays, and they have a wonderful agreement that allow us to do that. But this would, parking improvements would allow for the congressional members to park on the property. In addition, the improvements to, in addition to the parking spaces, the improvements that are being made, there's a full landscape package, landscape islands along both the right-of-ways and in the interior, dumpster enclosures, down lighting for the parking area. Currently, there's the teardrop shape lighting that can cast onto neighboring properties. We're certainly wishing to make an improvement for Hernando Baptist and the surrounding community. We'd like to state for one of the variances for the sidewalk, the southern portion sidewalk, the topography certainly makes it difficult to include that. But what we're proposing instead, as you'll find in criteria number 4 in your staff reports, that we would like to add additional sidewalk on the northern side of the church to go ahead and connect to existing sidewalk on Center Street there. And so when people use our parking area during city events, which they often do, they have a nice pedestrian path to make their way to downtown area. And as for the removal of the curb on the east side of the property, this just allows sheet flow into the proposed detention areas. Of course, there will be wheel stops there so vehicles can't access the grassy area there. And with the parking aisles and the parking lot with changes, this is just to be able to maximize an additional row to the parking area. With that, we ask for your favorable review and note that we're not trying to cut any corners in terms of finances or any type of design regulations for the parking lot. We do want to make a positive impact to the character of the neighborhood, and we do think this is going to be a really nice improvement over what exists there now for the safety of our congregation members and as well as an aesthetic viewpoint. Be happy to answer any questions. If you have any technical questions, Mr. Womble, we'd be happy to answer, and any specific church questions, we have staff available for that as well.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Darby?
Y'all aren't required to put in the sidewalks, y'all are just doing that?
No, as part of the improvements to the property, we have to put in the sidewalks on the north and the south side. What we're asking, instead of putting the sidewalk on the south side, take that section, if you will, that we would have to do. We're going to move it to the north side, a little bit further to the west, because there's existing sidewalk there on the south side of Center Street. Some of it is covered up by grass, but we would extend that sidewalk and make a complete connection and for pedestrian paths to the center and downtown area of Hernando.
To the corner of that road that intersects right there?
Right, I think it's School Street.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes,
So, okay, I follow you now.
Right, because the southern portion of the sidewalk doesn't really do anybody any good, as you've got homes to the east, and then you have another home on the corner there to the west. And there's no sidewalks there, and the likelihood that there ever being sidewalks is slim.
So that's kind of a concession to not do that. You're putting it
right. We're still going to spend the money, same amount of money, right? But we're just going to use it in a more helpful way to connect for pedestrian path for people from our parking lot to be able to enjoy walking downtown or whatnot.
So just follow up on that, just so I understand. So you're asking, I'm looking at the map, the east and south, no sidewalk, but extend the sidewalk on the north all the way out?
No sidewalk on the south.
None on the south?
None's required on the east. That's
Right.
just a curb that we're requesting to be
Right.
removed.
But then extend it across the north?
Extend it across almost the entire property to the north.
Okay.
Mhm.
You mentioned drainage. The curbs would prevent the drainage. Do you know which direction that sheet flows across? across your parking lot now?
It would flow to the east towards the detention, proposed detention areas. This would also assist in keeping our site dirt neutral, which, as you can imagine, hauling dirt is quite expensive these days.
How do y'all control the, I would assume the water flow, if you're wanting to remove from the east side of that, the curb and gutter, from your neighbor's properties from destroying that? Because, you know, that's going to be a lot of water coming off that.
Yeah,
bottom.
there's going to be some built-in detention areas that's going to hold that water for the required stormwater period.
This is kind of an interesting project from the standpoint that they're proposing underground detention. I think, or did you change that?
No, that's.
If I may address that.
Right, then.
Okay, I'm Ben Womble, Womble Engineering, 2883 Elise Drive here in Hernando. Just to address the comment from BJ, we've looked at a lot of different options. We've really been at this for probably 2.5 to 3 years. I know a lot's taken place in that period of time with the pandemic and costs. So we've kind of gone through several different layouts. We've actually acquired some property over that period of time. So throughout that process, we've looked at this thing a lot of different ways. We understand that we do have some residences on the east side of the property that would that are at the bottom of the hill that would be receiving the runoff from the project. So in looking at stormwater detention, that's one thing that we actually went and visited with Joe Frank about not too long ago. We have some unique challenges on our site due to Jared mentioned topography, but also we have there's no existing infrastructure to tie to underground. Everything that comes off the property sheet flows. There's no catch basins, there's no curb inlets. So that being the case, we did look at trying to do some sort of underground detention system. So point out a couple things along those lines. To do a traditional dry pond, based on the fact that we have those limitations as far as elevations go, it would have to be a very large pond. The surface area would be great to get the storage volume that we need. So obviously that would chew up a lot of space when it comes to the opportunity for parking places. As an alternative, we looked at underground detention. Again, those are, there are different systems out there that are available. We've looked at several of them. Again, we have challenges in that we don't have anything underground to tie to in the vicinity. So, we would still be looking at, some sort of point source at the curb where we would discharge. All things considered, that's, really a less than ideal solution to the stormwater detention issue. As BJ mentioned, we have looked into that, and most recently, as we talked with Joe Frank about it, I think he understood the challenges that we were up against, and we continue to try to to work in some opportunity to intercept that flow. The latest plan has basically improved swales and berms at the bottom of the parking lot in order to to shield those residents at the bottom of the hill from water rushing over their properties. We know that that's been an issue in the past. We know that that's something that we need to address. So we're looking at doing something that would certainly divert the water away from those adjacent properties. So as far as the underground detention, I think that that's a good solution in a lot of places, and it's one that we have looked at for this particular circumstance. I just don't know that it's realistic for the challenges that we have.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
You can always build up. Goes your garage, go up.
Ms. Cobb, without looking it up, is there any restrictions to the number of parking spaces that go in on that property? I know not the same likeness, but when we have a building like we went through with over there at the field house, per square footage? I know a church is different than that, but is there a requirement on the number of parking spaces on that and what they're proposing? Any conflicts?
I believe the provision has to do with the number of seats.
One space per 4 seats.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's the requirement. I was gonna pull out my handy dandy zoning ordinance and look that up, but since it had already had the certificate of development review, that was one of the things that
Correct.
it wasn't deficient.
Okay,
That's why I
no,
wasn't-
thank you. I just want to make sure on that. I'm sure Jared was ahead of the game when it came to things like that, so.
Is there do you have a approximate count of number of spaces that wouldn't be, 10 by 20 or 9 by 20, the full depth, and how much aisle is less than 25 in width?
Sure. We have, I know that drawing that you probably have in your packet is very small.
Very small.
I do have some half size, if that would help. I can certainly give you a copy of that. To answer your question, all the parking places, our intent, right now we have a combination of different size parking spaces and aisle widths. So the intent is to redo that in the existing parking lot. All parking places in the improved parking lot we're proposing would be 10 by 18, which I think there was a typo on the agenda. I think it was right in the staff report. Yeah, the requirement says that the parking places need to be, I believe it's 20 by 9 or 9 by 20. So we're talking same area. We're just going to configure it a little differently, an 18 by 10 as opposed to 20 by 9. So as far as the width on the aisles, all of the aisles, all the driving lanes, we're proposing at 24 feet with the exception of one. In order to keep everything lined up in the parking lot for circulation purposes, there is one aisle that will be adjacent to our education building where we just have, there's a little bit of building geometry that we're trying to, to keep everything lined up in the parking lot, that we're having to narrow that one lane down to 21 feet.
And it looks like it's just single loaded too, it's not, right?
That is correct. That would be on a single loaded parking bay.
Thank you.
Mr. Wamos, I understand there's no runoff control on the east side of the parking lot now,
Yes, sir, that's correct.
so this will be an improvement to that.
Yes, sir. It would be an improvement.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Darby or Mr. Walton? Thank you, gentlemen. Is there anyone here for or against this application? Please come forward, state your name and address. Preacher's not for it.
Well, I'm back here praying.
All right, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve, but I can't find the, where's the mo?
I'll do it.
Here
I
it
got
is,
it
right here.
here.
Doing that. Just giving that a tone. That was the printing sheet she off.
Okay. Make a motion to approve a design review variance by Mr. Ben Womble of Womble Engineering on behalf of Hernando Baptist Church to allow construction of additional parking with the following modifications. 1, allow parking spaces 10 feet by 18 feet deep. 2, allow two-way traffic aisles ranging in width from 21 to 24 feet. 3, allow elimination of continuous curb and gutter along the eastern boundary of the parking lot. 4, allow elimination of public sidewalk requirement along the east-south street for the subject property located on the south side of East Center Street, the north side of East South Street, west of Ice Plant Lane, and east of School Street in sections 13 and 18. Township 3 South, ranges 7 and 8 west, based upon findings A through D. Well, right? Yeah, that's it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Brumbelow?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins?
You said aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen?
Aye.
Motion to approve carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank y'all.
She printed it. Something separate here.
Hey, Shane, can I get that back from you?
Oh, yeah.
I got you.
See your copy of it?
You may be able to. Is that it?
Yeah. Mr. Page, you're going to be presenting this item?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to let Mr. Hawkins announce, so I recuse myself just for a moment to take a quick break. And then I'll be back shortly.
All right, staff, let's present the PL-1591.
All righty, thank you. Vice Chairman Hawkins. Basically, the important thing to understand about this application is that it is a rezoning to planned unit development, okay? And that's a little bit different animal than we usually deal with. Usually in a rezoning situation, we're just looking at, going from one zoning district to another zoning district. But under planned unit development, there is also a preliminary site plan, and this is considered a unified approval of the rezoning to PUD and the preliminary site plan. So later, when we talk about the motions, you'll notice under the motion to approve that it has the customary addressing of the criteria as well as conditions of approval relating to the preliminary site plan. Okay? So with that background, this is the request to approve this rezoning for a 0.8 acre parcel from its current zoning of C2 Highway Commercial District to the PUD Planned Unit Development District. And this property is located on the southeast corner of US 51 and Southern Street, okay? In section 13.3.8. Now, the future land use map for the city's currently adopted general development plan, identifies the subject property in the mixed-use land designation. Now, as Ms. Cobb pointed out in an earlier zoning application, the mixed-use designation has a few different subsets, one of which is traditional neighborhood development, neighborhood mixed use, central business mixed use, and then just general mixed use. Now, the subject property falls within the area designated as central business mixed use. If you look at the zoning map, you'll see that it's actually part of a corridor. We also have a copy of the comprehensive plan map in there, which shows it's part of a corridor moving south from the square. Okay? This category is characterized by a mix of commercial, office, public, institutional, and residential uses of varying densities of smaller scale design, less than 20,000 square feet. Generally, this designation applies to the town square and its surrounding areas. Zoning classification recommended by the General Development Plan for properties identified in central business mixed use could include either the PUD Planned Unit Development District, the TND Traditional Neighborhood Development District, and the C3 General Business District or the C4 Planned Commercial District. Therefore, since the central business mixed-use land use designation contemplates the inclusion of residential uses, and one of the recommended zoning districts is the PUD Planned Unit Development District, the applicant's request to rezone the property to the PUD district would conform to the general development plan. Okay? Now, Article 18, amendments of the City of Hernando zoning ordinance, allows for the amendment of text or map of the zoning ordinance, provide the applicant, addresses the 3 criteria relating to rezonings. Now, I have provided you in your staff report a review of those 3 criteria along with the applicant's responses, as well as staff comments relating to those 3 criteria. So I won't go into those in any detail. As far as the preliminary development plan goes, the proposed Patterson Road development will consist of 10 townhomes, which is an attached single-family residential form typically constructed on individual lots with the common interior lot line of each lot running down the common wall between each unit. The townhomes will be divided between 2 buildings with 5 townhomes in each building. The buildings will share a common courtyard between the 2 buildings of 8,800 square feet in size, which complies with the PUD requirements of 10% of the development for common open space. The proposed development will have 1 access point, a private shared driveway running north and south through the property, accessing onto Southern Street. This private drive will provide access to the enclosed garages at the rear of each residence. The private drive will be a 24-foot driving surface with asphalt surface with 618 box curbs. A hammerhead turnaround will be provided for the use of trash trucks and emergency vehicles at the south end of the private drive. A 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk will be provided along the rear of the units for internal pedestrian access, as well as a 5-foot wide public sidewalk along both the US Highway 51 and Southern Street frontages for connection to the city's pedestrian network. Dimensional requirements for the development are listed in your staff report. Basically, they're looking at a 0 setback on the front, 10 feet at the end of each building, a rear setback of at least 35 feet, a maximum height of 50 feet, and a minimum lot size of 2,500 square feet. Now, one thing I should mention about the maximum height of 50 feet. Basically, the topography of this property falls off towards the back. And I gave each of you, prior to the meeting, a copy of some photographs of the proposed building. Now, if you look at those, you can see that on the front of the buildings, they're basically 2 stories, and that would be along the Highway 51 frontage of the property. Now, if you turn to the 4th page, I believe it is. Yep. Well, wait a second. Yeah, the 4th page, you can see on that page the rear of the building. And you can see that basically you have this is actually 3 stories on the back, with the garage being on the ground floor and then the 2 stories above. And that's because of the change in topography. They're using the change of the topography to get that difference, okay? Now then, the proposed development has access to city water and sanitary sewer services. We have not yet received a copy of any proposed restrictive covenants for the Patterson Road development, and the PUD document contains only the most basic information concerning architectural provisions. The minimum the minimum heated floor area has been set at 1,850 square feet. So that would be the size of each unit. But no architectural elevations, we now have architectural elevations. Okay? The PUD document does state that the units will have a New Orleans influence and does contain a fairly expansive use of materials that may be used in the design of the units. The PUD document does not state whether the rear access garages will be 1 or 2 car garages, but based on the photos or the renderings that we now have, it looks like that there will be 2 individual garages, you know, for each unit. You know, you basically have 2 garage doors relative to each unit as it moves across the building. Now then, finally, the PUD document does not contain any information concerning the location or construction of cluster mailboxes conforming to the recently adopted amendment. So, you know, that's something that will need to be addressed. Of course, under that amendment requires the provision of the information on cluster mailboxes at the preliminary plat stage, which would be subsequent to this rezoning. So it's not necessarily required at this stage of development. Now then, let's see here. In terms of staff comments, this request for rezoning is for PUD. The PUD district is a planned district with approval of preliminary development plan as part of the request. As a result, we have conditions of approval. The one thing about the PUD document, it really wasn't clear about the development approach. Based on what's in the PUD document, you know, it talks about 1,850 square feet per unit. It talks about a 2,500 square foot minimum lot size, but at no point does the PUD document come right out and say that it's going to be individual units on individual lots. And the graphics that are included in the PUD document don't show individual lots. So it's just something that needs to be cleared up, relative to this application. The PUD document does not include any architectural designs. Of course, we now have the renderings that you have been seeing. The staff would recommend a condition of approval require conformance with all requirements of the city's design review ordinance. Additionally, the staff would also recommend the following changes. Note that the size of each residence shall be a minimum heated finished floor area. Note that the driveways will be washed aggregate concrete or pavers, not just concrete. Remove corrugated metal from the list of possible roofing materials. Remove smooth finish wood, vertical board and batten siding, and random width cut wood as potential cladding materials. Obviously, based on the design that is included in the architectural renderings that we now have, none of those materials would be appropriate, you know, for that design. And then revise the note concerning street trees to reflect that they will be planted 35 feet on center to comply with the requirements of the Design Standards Ordinance. Although it is probably a moot question since they are reflecting the proposed building at a 0 front yard setback and the proposed street trees in the right-of-way of U.S. Highway 51, I think it's probably doubtful that MDOT will allow them to plant trees in the state right-of-way. The PUD document currently reflects the adjoining water donation property as part of the project. If you look at most of the graphics that are included in the PUD document, you know, kind of the out boundary that is shown on the various graphics appears to include the water donation. And, you know, this is something that needs to be corrected in the PUD document because the water donation property to the east of the subject 0.8 acres belongs to the city. It's a city property, you know, and you know, it really can't be part of the rezoning. It can't be considered to be otherwise restricted as to how it might be used by the city or its ultimate future disposition in some way. So although I think it is fine that the developer wishes to, contribute his time and energy to clean up the water donation property, and I think the city would probably be receptive to that, I think the PUD document itself, needs to clarify that the water donation property is not part of the rezoning and not otherwise part of the plan. Okay? The common driveway reflected on the plans will be a private common driveway for all residents, such it does not meet the width requirement for a public street. In other words, it's not a 50-foot right-of-way, it's just literally the width of the driveway, which is 24 feet. Now, that being the case, I do believe a condition of approval should be included that the construction specifications for the common driveway should meet the city specifications for street construction. In other words, yes, it's not going to be a 30-foot wide pavement. Yes, it doesn't have 50-foot right-of-way. But I think in terms of the actual construction specifications, for, depth of limestone or soil cement and the depth of asphalt and so forth should meet the same requirements as a city street. Because clearly we're going to have traffic, a lot of traffic on there. It all gets back to the maintenance that's going to fall on the potential homeowners at a future date. And then finally, the submitted plan should be revised to reflect a sidewalk from each residence to the public sidewalk along US 51. And I would like to mention that although we have had problems with the Highway Department regarding sidewalks on 51, apparently the mayor has been successful in working with our Northern District Highway Commissioner to get MDOT to revise their policies regarding sidewalks on 51. So I am fairly confident that we will be able to get the sidewalk on 51 there. Then, of course, I have given you your motion to approve, and I have reviewed the 3 criteria, and then I have included the conditions of approval, which basically review the same items that I just discussed, so I'm not going to go into that in any great detail. Then, of course, submit with the preliminary plat the proposed location of the cluster mailbox site, in conformance with the city's recently adopted amendment. We'll need restrictive covenants, of course. And then, of course, 4 through 11, well, 14 rather, are our standard subdivision conditions, which will, of course, carry through all stages of further approval if you should, approve this rezoning. I have also given you a motion to deny addressing the 3 criteria, and, of course, if you feel like you need additional time to consider this application, or you feel like you need any additional information, you always have the option to table. That's my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Questions or comments from Mr. Page? Thank you, Mr. Page. Will the applicant please come forward, stating your name and address?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Bob Barber. I'm with Orion Planning Design. Our company is headquartered in Missoula, Montana, 1105 Village Way, Missoula, Montana. I live at 919 Getwell Road, Hernando. Proceed?
Yes, sir.
Yes. May I see if I can get my computer to work?
Absolutely.
The last presenter has to take us all to get something to eat after.
Thank you. Happy to. Thank you all for, I know it's a long night. I'll try not to prolong it. We did take some time. We wanted to convey the quality of the proposed Patterson Road condominium, townhome project. As BJ has indicated, the location and the various aspects of the staff report and the staff recommendations. Let me make clear, this is individual units on individual lots intended for home ownership. The actual square footage of the units is 2,300 heated space rather than the 1,850. I'll briefly go through what I have here, just 4 points. I want to give the site context and history of this area, which has been purchased by Mickey Davis. And then we'll look at some design features of Patterson Row, the City of Hernando planning, how it's governed under your plan, and then review the change and the public need for the project. In terms of site context and history, it is just under an acre. It's located at the corner of, here we go. So located at the corner of Southern Street and Highway 51. I've noted where the courthouse is in blue up top. This is just about 1,000 feet south of the town square, just right straight south. So the yellow area is the site. The water donation was mentioned, and by the way, it's not our intention to say that water donation is part of the project. We just wanted to show the water donation, that there was public open space adjacent to it, and that the developer will clean it up, and because it's could stand some cleaning up, and he's willing to do that as an amenity to the site. And then the city shop is right next door. So as we look at the site, if this will advance, just a close-up, more of a close-up shot of that site, the Highway 51 on the left side, the water donation, and then all those pieces as they relate to one another. That was the first map was in 1957, that black and white aerial. That's the oldest aerial map we can find of the area. And then I'm just fading the new 2019 aerial map on top of that just to show kind of context over time. This has traditionally been a residential property. There are 4 homes there at one time. There's still a couple of homes there that are proposed to be removed. They're in dilapidated condition. They're not in any standard way. They're really not habitable, quite frankly. So the photos are just a look at the site. So we're standing across 51, looking to the northeast on the 2 top photos. Immediately adjacent to the south is that convenience store that you see there, the painted yellow and blue and so forth. So that'll give you a little sense from 51. I know y'all all know where it is and have seen the site, I'm certain. This is at the corner of 51 and Southern there, looking south into the site. And the bottom 2 pictures are sort of, the one on the left looks up into one of the old homes that is really not habitable. And then the water donation there is where the piping is there. And just a few more, the city maintenance facility on the bottom, a couple of other contexts in and around the site. That's what we're looking at. The development represents infill. It's going to be redevelopment. It's an upgrade to the site. We would like to construct the townhomes there. The city plan calls for it in that red shaded area or pink shaded area to be mixed use, central business district mixed use. BJ's already been over that. The rezoning that we're asking for is compliant with the plan. It implements the plan. The property is on C2 highway commercial now, which we believe is inappropriate. Not the shape of the lot, the topography, it just doesn't work for C2 zoning. And so it does work for this. This is the site on the left. And then we've just fade the site plan in on top of it, and we'll sure go back and put lot lines, because those will be individual units on individual lots in each of those areas. That's a blow up of the site plan on the right, with 51 on the left side, the access drive on the east side of the homes. And this is the architecture, and this is the architecture, not a concept, it's not a photograph. This was generated by Urban Arc in Memphis specifically for this site. So Mr. Davis will build the units that you see here. They're intended to be traditional. They're intended to be historic and have a historic flavor and reflect the character of some of Hernando's best architecture. And that's what's been modeled for the site. And I think you may have some of that in your packet there, those photographs. That's just another shot looking to the south, down Highway 51, and then, as was mentioned, on the rear of the building, because the site slopes, these would be some would refer to them as tuck-unders. So the garages are tucked under the units. The units will have the 2 levels above the garages, and that's the rear of the building. Just real quickly to justify it, it's quite impressive to see Hernando's infill sites, and I've called them out there. Just a few of them. We know about Hernando West, which is on the extremity of the neighborhood, but the Ivy up here is constructed. Dale Wilson is also constructing this townhome project on Memphis Street, both of those right there. Cliff McLemore had an infill site. There's one under construction here. Multiple rehabs all throughout the area, the ongoing preservation of the town square, and then infill residential rehabs nearby. That's just intended to give a sense of the change that's occurring and the trending change that's occurring, and we believe that would justify the request. That, along with the fact that the city's plan is a mixed-use category on this site. And those are the infill townhomes and small lot projects that are occurring now in Hernando, either having just been built or in the process of being built. So that's Patterson Row. Proposed project, and just for your record, this is the PowerPoint. I know you got a staff report. I don't know if you want PowerPoint or not. To comment on the recommendations, certainly we will put the lot lines in. They're actually in the CAD file. They just didn't show up under the site plan. The cluster mailbox is intended to go down in the common area on the backside. There are a couple of items we would request consideration on. One is the building material. Well, let me just go down them. I'm referring to, I'm on page 6 of 9 on the staff report. Certainly, we'll note that the finished heated area of the unit is actually 2,300 feet. The driveway is, you see from the photograph, the driveways are behind the building down the hill, and we would prefer to embellish the sidewalk up on the street level rather than have a washed aggregate or washed gravel washed concrete drive on the backside. It's just concrete, we think is fine there. It's on the backside. And we would be happy to do brick pavers or embellish the sidewalk on the 51 Street side. Would ask your consideration there. Corrugated metals from the list of roofing materials. What's being proposed is architectural shingles but would like the option to have accent pieces on the dormers or on some of the low-pitched porches. We believe that's consistent. There's metal roofs on the town square of Hernando, and we believe it's architecturally or historically fitting for what it is we're building here. Not as the primary material, but just as accent piece. The same thing as related to the wood and the vertical board and batten, the various combinations of siding. We want a very architecturally distinctive product, and this gives the ability to produce accent pieces and places in the on these units if we are permitted to use those materials. We'll work with MDOT on the street trees. I totally get that. I know that's a challenge, but we would like to try so that we can have a really nice streetscape there. And we would plant those at the appropriate intervals. Those items are what we would like your consideration on. All that would be detailed in the covenants. This zoning would be binding on us. The elevations would be binding that you're seeing here because it's what we're proposing. And would really appreciate your consideration for this project. Happy to answer questions about it.
Questions or comments from Mr. Barber?
That is 2 garages per
That's correct.
right?
Yes, sir.
Or 2 stalls on it.
Correct.
Is MDOT going to allow the parallel parking that I saw out front?
We're going to propose it. It's on the town square. I know that's been there a long, long time, but we think it's consistent. We have a mobility guy that's one of our partners who we think we can do it. We can do the design, and hopefully we can get that approved.
Is there anything, I know you mentioned restrictive covenants, we haven't seen them, but anything about, going to be in there about rentals?
Oh, a good point. These are intended for home ownership. They are not set up for rentals.
They're not condominiums, they're townhomes?
No, they're townhomes. Yes, sir, that's right. You'll buy the lot and you'll buy the unit.
Well, will that be in the restrictive covenants then no rentals?
I can't speak to the tenure in the covenants, but there's no intention of renting the units. Now, if someone purchases a unit and rents it to a child or my mother or whatnot, I can't speak to that. But it's not a rental project.
Mr. Jordan, are you saying that even if, for instance, if I were to buy one, then the covenants would restrict me from renting it to you then after I buy it? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Whoever purchases
So whoever owns it can never rent it, is what you're asking? Can we do that?
I don't know. I mean, I know there's been some conversation of this and how that is hard to enforce legally.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that it's like I'm not an attorney, but I
I hear
don't.
people ask for it all the time.
Well, just clarifying what you were asking, that's,
Well, I did a little quick research on that, and you're seeing it more often now, but you have to find that it's for the good of the area, the neighborhood, the greater good, so that it's as possible.
it is possible to do that restriction in a homeowner? Okay. That's good to know.
I believe that Germantown did that, actually. It has to go through the courts, but you'd have to find, the owner of the property would have to find an attorney that would be willing to fight that in court. So, I mean, that's, Germantown literally just did it, I think maybe a year or 2 years ago. And yeah, it could have some resistance in the courts, but where's the burden at, right? Seems to me to fall with the developer. I would think,
But the city also doesn't enforce the covenant, correct? BJ?
Right, but I think and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mr. Jordan, but I think what Mr. Jordan is kind of getting at is that in a development like this, you're going to have a property owners association. You have common open space areas, you have the private drive, you're going to have the cluster mailboxes, so there's going to have to be a property owners association, and they can enforce the restrictive covenants.
Right.
So, if someone tried to, buy units and rent them out, obviously the property owners association could take action if they so chose.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, the restrictive covenants are only enforceable by the other property.
Yes.
But there's no
I guess,
plans.
are you asking if that can be included in their
Yeah,
covenants?
yeah. I mean,
Bob, is that something you guys could look at?
We can certainly look at it, yes, sir. There's no intention of, sorry.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, and not just in this case, but literally anything that the commission may consider, I've always said if it's important to you, you need to make it a condition of the approval. If you ask someone, will they do that, and they say, oh, yeah, sure. If you don't make it a condition of the approval, they can change their mind when they walk out the door.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I've just, having talked to others, I mean, we see a lot of townhomes come through here, you saw what was debated earlier. And, it's hard to build apartments in Hernando, and it's hard to get those off the ground, as I understand it. And I just don't want to see people naming things town. And these look beautiful, don't get me wrong. They're great. But I don't want to see people trying to get around calling something an apartment, calling it a townhome, just to be a future rental.
we would not want to put, you cannot rent your unit in a set of restrictive covenants. And let me embellish the thought. These are 2,300 square foot units. I mean, they're intentionally upscaled. They will be put on the market for sale. And when you get into family situations, and they're difficult to enforce. So for those reasons, we would ask not to have that particular restriction associated with this. But having said that, we can emphatically declare these are market units to be put on the market for sale, for ownership purposes, mortgages. Yes, sir.
I'd like to add a little bit more onto that. We have a lot of businesses that come and present something. They'll say, this is similar to what we've done in Olive Branch, similar to what we've done in South Haven. I know y'all recall, I think Trustmark said the same thing about their bank. This is similar to what we've done in DeSoto County. So I think it's fair enough to say that in South Haven, I know 2003, 2002, there was townhomes built there with the same intentions of not being rented. But if that 2003 wasn't that long ago, almost every one, 100% are all rental, 100% in South Haven. So I think it's fair enough if we're going to compare some other businesses to what they're doing. It's fair enough to compare this project.
No, I agree.
To
And
the
it goes
same
back to what Mr.
standards.
Page is saying, that it's up to us to kind of add those kind of things to the approval to ensure we protect 10 years from now, 15 years. However we word it, however we do it, I don't know if there's, I understand your concern about not wanting to put that in there, but if there's, like Mr. Skeen said, there's something you can look at, and how can we word it in such a way that it presents it that way?
Now, my concern about that is if I purchase that, and who knows what may happen down the road, my son decides to live there and I'm getting ready to move somewhere else, and I'm going to be told, but you wouldn't know if we're renting it or not. He's somebody staying there. How would you actually, unless a developer comes in and does a mass rental type deal, but a family member there, who's going to be, are you renting this place? I mean, nobody's going to be following up like that, and I just think that's kind of departmentalizing a potential owner that says, if my aunt comes down, a parent bought it, I might let my son rent it till he gets on his feet. You just never know the dynamics of that family, and puts that restriction on them. that they can never rent it is people probably say, well, I don't want to buy here because I don't know what the future holds.
That's a good point.
That's a good point, I think, but they would be buying it under those known conditions. So, I mean, there's homes that you could buy right now in Germantown, Carterville, Hernando, South Haven, that you know buying the home, you cannot rent out that home. I mean, you bought it under those conditions. That's the same thing as for a car, vehicle. I mean, you buy a car, you know you can't haul dirt in it.
And it kind of goes to that too, I mean, it's up to the it'll be up to the homeowners of the additional townhomes to enforce that covenant.
And the association,
Yeah, the association. So if it's not an issue, they're not gonna enforce it, they're not gonna push that. I mean, I think it's, you know, I hate to say it's all relative, you know, we're all it's kind of discussing in the abstract in a sense, but, you know, I wouldn't anticipate if it's a son or a child that it would be to the point it was so offensive.
You know, you brought that up too. What I'd be curious about back in 2003, was there a homeowners association back then that prevented it, or they didn't have it, and that's why it had it, because they didn't protect it early on.
Absolutely,
You know,
100%.
From day one, they didn't protect it. So homeowners association here would be responsible for protecting that future, whatever they decide.
There's multiple, I mean, we've got residents all over the city that moved here from South Haven, and one of their main concerns is the developments that happened there, and I don't think they were pre-planned enough to prevent that from happening. And we see that, and there's residents in here tonight that had the same concern. You know, they're raising their family here, and they're gonna be here another 10, 15 years. So it makes sense to bring up these points.
I hear that more, as much or more than any other concern about building this.
And maybe I'm looking at it, I'm a retired Army guy, so I would live in a place, and I know military communities are a little different, and I purchase a nice home. I said, so when I leave, am I gonna have to sell my home, or I could rent it to another Army person that's coming in? So now I have a property that is being rented, I don't have to try to up and sell it just because I'm relocating. And kind of the same thing with that. A person purchases it and decides to move out of state. I love this place. I really want to hold on to it, but I can't rent it, so I'm going to have to sell it. And I may come back. I don't know. So I don't want to get rid of it, and I end up coming back. Now, I got to buy somewhere else. I don't have anywhere to go. Just a lot of 6 in one hand, half a dozen in another situations where I can see the pros and cons on both ends.
Yes, and I appreciate the comments, and my intention is not to be argumentative at all, but the nature of what's being constructed here is significant, and their home ownership, the price points are major. They don't lend themselves to rental in the way that some other condo projects perhaps may. The Ivy, I think, is rental. It was rental out of the gate. I think I'm right on that, which is just right north of the town square. I'm not sure about the one that's built on Memphis Street. And I'm not sure about McLemore's across the way or Kimberlin's. But anyway, the concern is understood. There's no intention of this being a rent. This is not a rental project. This is a for sale, market rate, upscale, 2,300 square foot condominium unit that we're wanting to propose.
I think the bigger thing to consider here, and I'm not going to sit here and say that these units couldn't possibly be rented at some point, okay? But I think the thing to consider is, what Bob keeps coming back to, which is they're talking about a minimum size of 2,300 square feet. So if you're talking about rent on 2,300 square feet, you're talking about probably well over $1,500 a month. You're probably talking close to $2,000 a month. Yes. And chances are, even if they do wind up being rented, I don't think you're going to have to worry about the people that can pay that kind of rent. But that's just my view.
I think the Ivy's going for more than 2,000 a month, I believe.
I
And
mean, you know, if we were
there's been
talking
some
about
problems
units of like
already
eight hundred and
with that
seventy-five square
property.
feet or something like that, you know, clearly that's more in line with what you would find in an apartment complex. But that's not what's being discussed here.
One more question about the drive, and because this is something that I'm gonna be addressing in a project that I'm working on. At what point does emergency, fire department, fire chief have to take a look at that and say, no, I need to be able to turn around. I don't ever want to back my truck out, That's something I got told by a city. At what point does that review happen, BJ, in a PUD?
Well, since this is, although to a certain extent this is single-family attached, for the purposes of the design standards ordinance, this would be considered a multifamily development, okay? Which means it has to go through the certificate of development approval. So certainly the fire would have an opportunity at that time to review it. Certainly, when we take, if, and I'm saying if, the planning commission were to approve it tonight, obviously this would go to the board at their second meeting in March. And, the fire chief, the police chief, they all get copies of the packet, so does Steve, as part of that process.
Okay.
So it's not going to be a situation where they're not going to have their opportunities, to chime in on it.
On the corrugated metal roof, is there a way, I understand what you were saying about the decorative pieces and the dormers and things. Is there a way just to clarify that that's the purpose of that material?
Yes, sir. We could state it that way, for the
I think the same
siding
thing with
material and the
with
roofing
the other
material.
wood materials too? Because I understand what you're saying about the trim work and different things like that. Just
Right.
clarify that's not the main construction material.
We're limited to that, to decorator strips or dormers or low-slope roofs, minimal application, not as a primary surface material.
It's probably more of like an architectural standing seam type roof than a corrugated metal tin,
Well,
The-
in
is-
the PUD document, it does specifically state corrugated metal, and then later in the same section, standing seam metal. So it is a distinction between the two.
Yeah, it's an architectural option, just to provide, and, we could find precedent for it around the town square now. It may not be used at all. If it were used, it would be limited to accent pieces and decorator areas.
I know Brian does really good work.
It's
Urban
real
Art,
talk.
Bullard does
He's
really
off there,
beautiful
yes.
stuff, so I trust anything, he puts together.
Yes.
If that is the architect, that's attractive coming down 51, that would look nice.
Yeah, Urban Art modeled the architecture.
My concern, even more so with the rental, and I think I'll be the guy that says it, but we have that gas station, we have Kilgore's right there. That doesn't fit yet. Yours is definitely an upgrade to the surrounding areas. What do we do as a city to ensure that it would be a sold property and be attractive, not only by design of that, but surrounding areas, as opposed to they're sitting on this property and their only option at that point is the owner of these properties, Mickey Davis, having to turn it into, like, well, I gotta rent it out, I gotta cover my costs. When does that, I think that's the separation we wanna see, is what are we gonna do to Kilgore's and the gas station to dress those up as a city to help, I guess, that peace of mind that these will be sold and not them waiting to sell them because nobody wants to live next to that gas station. How do we address that?
Well, at this point in time, and Kristen, you can correct me if I am telling a lie here, but I do not believe that the city has a property maintenance code.
That's correct.
The city's building code only applies to new construction. So in terms of existing buildings and their condition, You know, until they get to the point where they are unsafe, you know, we don't have anything, you know, basically if it's unsafe, we have ordinances in place where we can demolish the house, okay? We've got codes in place for a new building that's being constructed, okay? But we don't really have anything in between, all right? So, you know, in my opinion, you know, I'm not sure that there's really much of anything the city can do at this point in time.
They're both legal, non-conforming buildings.
Just
Unless they
question
bring
how
them
it
in.
is.
Well, no, that's.
I mean,
that's a
I think
legitimate
that's
question.
what's in my mind is
Right.
like, you know, Mickey's gonna be sitting on these properties because, I mean, and it's personal. I wouldn't move next to a gas station or Kilgore's, you know. But again, I think that's where this whole rental scare is coming in because we assume that that's what it would go into. I'm speaking for myself, I'm not gonna speak for the rest, but, you know, I agree with Keith that, you know, if my son wants this house and I need to move off, you know, I could rent it to him, and there wouldn't be any conflict with the additional tenants, but in the same sense, I think the area right there is, and then I'm speaking a gas station in Kilgore's, because that's what comes to mind, next to a beautiful property like that might be toward some potential buyers too.
Isn't
So,
Twisted Drain right to south?
well, they sold, so it's,
They're not there anymore?
I think the bigger question is, you know, being that we're talking about a 2,300 square foot unit, you know, if you think for a moment how much, you know, if you were talking about a single-family detached house that was 2,300 square feet in size, you're probably talking about well towards $200,000. Now, let's say, just pulling a number out of the air, let's say that the units sell for $150,000, okay? Somebody pays $150,000 for one of these units, and then their job relocates them to Atlanta. You know, what are they gonna do? I mean, I've had to deal with that situation in the past myself, you know, where my job has taken me out of one state to another, you know? And I was fortunate enough that I was able to make a quick sale on my house. But if I hadn't, you know, my father, one time, he got relocated, and it was like over 2 years before they sold their house in the previous town, you know? And, you know, because you can't carry a note in two places unless you're making really good money, you know? So, you know, I see that as being kind of the bigger question.
Well, and that's a good point too, but isn't it also a buyer beware? You go into a position knowing, I mean, nobody knows that your job's gonna get relocated in a year after you buy a house. And that, we can't put that on the developer, I don't think. But according to the current square footage rates, those things would be more like 350, 400.
Yes, the construction costs will be around the $200 per square foot mark. It's significant. It's a major investment. If it were to rent, you're talking market rents of $2,500 and $2,800 to rent a unit. But the intention is not to rent. And then would also ask the commission to consider the context now. What's there? I mean, there's rental houses there right now, 2 or 3 of them down in the hole. All of that is redeveloped, and your point is well taken about the station to the south, but Hernando is, this will set a tone, and there will be more pressure from the townhomes to force the station to clean up than the station to have a negative impact on the townhomes. Just by the nature of the economy, the nature of the design here, it is a significant investment that's happening here.
That's kind of my thought too, when you've got a developer like Mickey who's taking the courage to jump in and put something like this upscale on this position, you're inspiring the neighborhood to kind of come up to those standards. So, to your point, right, it's not about the gas station going to negatively affect. I mean, I don't know, you might, it depends, like Mr. Carr, it's like, it's a personal choice. I'm not going to move into a home that's right next to a Kilgore's or something like that.
Mr. Kimberlin is building right across from a car place that's got cars scattered all over the place over there. I mean, it's, in that, Kimberlin's development will pressure that other than the other way around.
Just
So-
one last question I had, is that water, the property in the back, the detention pond in the back?
Water donation.
The donation. Is that, what's the future intent of that? We're not rezoning that.
We would like to work with the city on it. It's a great spot, so those water donations there are for, if you're not, when the original land grant to the city of, when the land was patented, when the territory was ceded by the Native Americans, the first group to Plat, Hernando, was a group, it's called the Boston Land Company. They came from Boston and they were land speculators, and they created the Hernando Town Plat. In the very center of it, they were speculating that it would become a county, and so they gave the center of it to what was then called the Board of Police, or the local government. I'm sorry, you tripped my trigger, I love this stuff. It speculates so that they could sell the lots around this donation for the county government. Well, as a part of the overall original Hernando plan, 1832, there were 4 water donations given, one on each quadrant. There's one over there, there's one there. I'm not sure about that one. That one may be gone. And then there's this one, and the purpose was for a permanent water supply before running water. It's a beautiful, well, it's not a beautiful piece of property now, but it has the potential to be a beautiful piece of property, and it's a great amenity. So we would love to work with the city. Mickey will clean it up on the front end, get it underbrushed, get it green, and then figure out a nice use for it if the city is open to
Sounds like a
doing it.
great place for a park.
Yes, it is an excellent place for a park. And in fact, that's what is proposed in Hernando West over here, and that donation is a public park with that one. So, sorry, I didn't mean to get off on. Yeah.
Mr. Barber, did you want, I know when you mentioned, we were talking about the corrugated metal and the other items, I think they're under paragraph C.
Yes, sir.
On page 6 of 9. What, you were wanting to remove number 2, I guess revise number 3, and remove number 4, just so we're clear.
I'm on page 6 of 9, C1. We note the size of the residences, we discussed that. C2, the driveways, the driveway, we wanted consideration for concrete because it's down, it's behind, it's not exposed, and if we need to make up for that, we will provide brick pavers, sidewalk up on the Highway 51 side that you can see. The corrugated metal we discussed. The various siding materials as decorator accents we discussed. And then we will comply with the design, the street tree planting requirements. That's not at issue. Although the point was made that MDOT, it may be a challenge getting MDOT to let us do that, but we certainly want to try.
But you were, I thought you had an issue too with the removing the smooth finished wood.
No, we would like to be able to use that as a decorator, as decorator accents in appropriate places on the architecture, not as a primary surface material. Board and batten may be appropriate under the, on the porch areas or some, there may be an appropriate place for that, as well as the other materials.
Any other questions or comments from Mr. Barber?
Mr. Chairman, my last comment, if I may make it. So Mickey, just so you know, he built the building, right, the 3-story mixed use right here on the town square. The depot is his development as you're coming in on Commerce Street on the right. That's Mr. Davis's. And Williamsbrook are 3 of his developments, just to give you a sense of the quality of the work that will be done. And this is going to even be nicer than that, I think. That's all. Thank y'all very much.
Is there anyone here for or against this application? Say something. For or against this application? If not, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Aldermen of a rezoning requested by Mr. Bob Barber with Orion Planning and Design. On behalf of Mickey Davis, the property owner, requested a rezoning and preliminary development plan approval for an 8/10 acre parcel from its current zoning in the C2 Highway Commercial District to the PUD Planned Unit Development District, located on the southeast corner of US Highway 51 and Southern Street in Section 13, Township 3 South, Range 8 West, based upon the findings in 1, 2, 3, with revisions to C, and make sure I do this correctly, to allow under 1C2, 3.1C2, to allow concrete on the rear area of the development, or where it's not visible from Highway 51. On number 3, to allow decorator accents for corrugated metal, and also on number 4, to allow as decorator accents the other building materials referenced in there, but not as a primary surface material. And also, based upon numbers 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and contingent upon restrictive covenants containing a restriction on rentals in the development.
Second.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Brumbelow?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins? Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Scann?
Motion to approve carries.
It's a good looking project.
Ms. Cobb, Ms. Page. Ms. Cobb, Ms. Page, do we have any other business? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Can I make it?
Second?
Second.